The Thunder God and Mother knew very well that once someone fell into her Chenkuin bag, even an immortal would have no way out. This mortal was already terrifyingly capable. Unfortunately, he offended her, and was so ugly. Thinking the situation was settled, the Thunder God and Mother couldn't help but relax her mind, intending to shift the refining power into the bag, fiercely refining these two ugly people into ashes, leaving only her kind of beauty. But just as the power of the Chenkuin bag was drawing inward, a voice saying, "I want to be a hero," suddenly appeared in her mind, and the scene before her eyes shifted, revealing a look of surprise. Because she saw that Duan Yun, who had clearly fallen into the bag, was still outside. In a contest of experts, a situation can often be turned around in just an instant. When she wanted to once again mobilize the power of the 8 heavenly dragons to deal with Duan Yun's electromagnetic sword field had already moved before her. The electromagnetic sword field instantly broke free from the grip of the Chenkuin bag, surging towards her with terrifying thunderfire. As the sword field passed, the floating dust in the air instantly froze. No, it seemed as if the dust was all standing upright. The Chenkuin bag was the field of the Thunder God and Mother, but this sword field was Duan Yun's field. Just now, Duan Yun had invoked the Moon Dream Heart Sutra, constructing a very simple illusion dream. At that time, the sword array and the Chenkuin bag were in a standoff with Thunder Sword and Sword Fire involved. The situation was very chaotic, and it was this chaos that made the simple illusion dream seem real, deceiving the Thunder God and Mother. And it was this rare opportunity that allowed Duan Yun to strike while the iron was hot. The Thunder God and Mother knew this was bad, and pulled the thunder chain on her body, wanting to let the 8 heavenly dragons take her away. "Where do you think you're going?" The electromagnetic sword field suddenly accelerated. The airflow in the area covered by the sword field was controlled by it, and the area near the sword field was the same. The Thunder God and Mother's figure was dragged, suddenly slowing, and simultaneously as the "I want to be a hero" voice appeared in her mind, a sword chi appeared out of nowhere, aiming to pierce her head. This sword was too fast, incredibly fast, as if it required no time to appear from nothing. The Thunder God and Mother was greatly alarmed, striking out with the power of thunder and lightning to block. But that thunder and lightning still passed through her palm thunder, yet caused no harm. An illusion. The Thunder God and Mother realized that whether it was the scene of the opponent falling into the Chenkuin bag or this sword light, they were all illusions. And with her extraordinary wisdom, she immediately saw the flaw in this illusion technique, that this illusion, when activated, would create a voice like, "I want to be a hero," in her mind. As long as there was that voice, it was an illusion. This seat is truly too wise. "I want to be a hero." At this moment, that voice sounded again in her mind, and immediately a sword chi like a red line attacked. "Another illusion. Don't think you can trick me." "Ah!" In the next moment, a painful pig-like scream suddenly erupted. What she thought was an illusion here turned into real sword chi. Representing suffering, the 10-layered spring rain sword chi. Because Duan Yun put all his power into this one spring rain sword chi, it became incredibly fast like it was unreal. The Thunder God and Mother had a face full of suffering. Which is real, which is fake? Clearly, Duan Yun predicted her judgment, which is why she fell for it. This only proves that extraordinary wisdom far surpasses any so-called outstanding wisdom. In fact, the Thunder God and Mother had the space to escape, but after losing twice in a row, that space was completely gone. The power of thunder and lightning surged within her, just snapping this red line like spring rain sword chi. As a result, Duan Yun's electromagnetic sword field had already engulfed her. Ah! Within the sword field, the electromagnetic swords all rushed towards her. The Thunder God and Mother flicked her hand. The thunder chain entwining her body instantly struck away the electromagnetic swords, at the same time adjusting the position of the heavenly dragon, wanting to bring the Chenkuin bag over. But young hero Duan always acts with the strategy of striking while the iron is hot, immediately unleashing full force, only to see the 10-layered spring rain sword chi burgeon across the blade's surface. The whole sword seemed densely covered with red lines, all directed at the Thunder God and Mother. The Thunder God and Mother resisted with great strength, relying on the shaking of the chain with both hands and the explosion of fat on her body to block the sword chi. But ultimately, she was within Duan Yun's sword field. Both speed and strength were greatly reduced, whereas Duan Yun's sword chi was so dense, it could be said to have given her the pain of half a city. The most tragic screams echoed. The Thunder God and Mother was in such pain she was nearly driven mad. Her mouth twisted to her left temple one moment, to her right temple the next, her hair frayed from the shock. Ordinary people love to talk about stories of divine retribution from immortals leaving humans suffering miserably, and the Thunder God and Mother was such a deity to the people below. Yet at this moment, she was enduring unprecedented pain. She could guarantee there was no punishment in the heavens as agonizing as this. Absolutely none. In several moments of days, she felt an impulse to self-destruct. Because the pain was too much, even she could barely withstand it. Yet she held on. Her world of great beauty was yet to form. There were still so many ugly people in heaven and earth, and the man tormenting her now was the ugliest of them all. How could she die? And she also knew clearly, the opponent's methods were not enough to kill a deity like her. As long as the Chenkuan bag chased up, everything would become a new opportunity. But this seemingly extremely short time, for her was unusually long, like every breath being pierced by 1,000 blades, or as if there were thousands of children crawling out from her pores simultaneously, layer upon layer, with no limit. Duan Yun had heard something in a past life. Being bitten by a mosquito is level 1 pain, childbirth is level 10 pain, so what's more painful than level 10 childbirth pain? The answer is getting bitten by a mosquito during childbirth. In other words, pain can accumulate. While making half the city suffer, Duan Yun didn't forget to summarize his experience. His 10-layered spring rain sword chi's induced pain can accumulate. Normally, reaching a certain height of pain would make a person faint, but his sword chi keeps people conscious. In other words, no fainting allowed, not even suicide is an option. All that's left is to fully experience the cumulative pain. One could say, Thunder God and Mother is currently the most pained person in centuries. The pain is beyond human. She endures despite having the rare capability to commit suicide, just by relying on her superhuman body and supreme will. No matter how much pain she feels, how venomous her gaze might be, it will all be unleashed on this ugly mortal later. At this moment, her mouth hurt so much it had collided with her upturned nose. Amidst immense pain, Thunder God and Mother had continuously ignored one person, the Murong brothers. Yes, she didn't care about him. Firstly, his presence was weak. Secondly, Duan Yun's relentless offensive left her with no attention to spare for someone with such a weak presence. Maybe even if she knew it was an illusion earlier, her intuition was that he had been trapped in the Chenkuan bag and was gone. And now, the Murong brothers, who always appear last, have arrived. In the electromagnetic sword field, there were many thunderfire. One cluster fell from the air unnoticed. At that moment, the Murong brothers suddenly revealed their form. Simultaneously, the Blood Shadow Mad Blade appeared with them. The Blood Shadow Mad Blade was blood-like, and the Murong brothers emerging from the thunderfire were layer upon layer of blood shadow. Ah! The blood-like blade edge suddenly fell, fast and fierce. It was the Murong brothers unleashing all their power after gathering strength. During the earlier eye contact, Murong brothers and Duan Yun had already tacitly completed the division of labor. Duan Yun utilized the thunderfire in the array to hide the Murong brothers' form, while the Murong brothers relied on thunderfire to advance undetected, just waiting for this opportunity. They wanted this fat pig to die. Thunder God and Mother was already in paralyzing agony, unable to extricate herself. The Murong brothers' sudden appearance caught her off guard, leaving no time for effective defense. Just a crisp crack was heard, as the Blood Shadow Mad Blade accurately pierced into her neck, and because the blade was too long, it even collided with her spine. The Blood Shadow Mad Blade's edge had grooves, and the Murong brothers were proficient enough to sense details. Confident they could extract the spine along with decapitating her, when the blade hit the opponent's spine, the Murong brothers acted immediately. As the blade entered the body, they firmly planted their feet on Thunder God and Mother's shoulders, pulling the blade and extracting the spine. With a swoosh, the spine flew up half a foot before suddenly halting. This was because Thunder God and Mother's fatness came alive again, tightly gripping the blade. Thunder God and Mother had rarely suffered such severe injury. At least in her remaining memories, there was no such incident. Previously, despite being in excruciating pain, as long as she didn't commit suicide, she wouldn't die, but now her life was at risk. The spine, also known as the dragon bone, if removed, would mean demise even for an immortal. She remembered a fellow who liked to extract people's spines to use as a sword. Thunder God and Mother desperately held onto the blade, her gaze venomous as she said, "Shameless! Ambush!" Seeing this scene, Duan Yun acted without hesitation, reducing and weakening the sword field, channeling the remaining true chi into his own body. At this moment, his body resembled an unstoppable flying arrow, rapidly sweeping towards Thunder God and Mother. The Murong brothers struggled to extract the blade. He was there to help. With a thud, when Duan Yun landed on Thunder God and Mother's shoulder, the two brothers' hands were already gripping the hilt together. D. Duan Yun and the Murong brothers exerted force simultaneously, causing the blood shadow Mad Blade's blade to surge upward, pulling Thunder God and Mother's spine along with it. This time, the blade raised the spine 2 feet, visibly showing that her spine was golden. Yet, in this situation, they didn't fully extract it, because the Chenquin bag formed by the 8 heavenly dragons was once again approaching, sucking at the two to pull their hands holding the blade down. One side was pulling up, the other was sucking down like a tug-of-war. Only this tug-of-war seemed rather underworldly, the rope being Thunder God and Mother's spine, concerning the life and death of both parties. The Murong brothers looked pained. The earlier strike had nearly exhausted them. Now facing resistance was not much different than a spent force. Duan Yun's state was better, but not by much. This should have been his highest intensity usage of the electromagnetic sword field. Both the previously charged thunder and the demon electricity within him were running low. The demon electricity, sensing his fatigue, even began acting out of control. Continuing like this, it was uncertain who would prevail. Just then, Duan Yun's extraordinary wisdom flashed. His eyes lit up. He squatted his body pulling the blade, and placed a palm on Thunder God and Mother's head. "You suck me, I'll suck you back." Beaming divine skill, Duan Yun used his left hand to pull the blade with the Murong brothers, while his right hand was on Thunder God and Mother's head, absorbing her true chi and thunder. Using one hand to pull the blade and the other to absorb simultaneously, draining her true chi and thunder, was like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. "I'm simply a genius." Nevertheless, Thunder God and Mother's true chi and thunder were so pure, purer than anyone he had absorbed before. This increased the difficulty of assimilation for him. Moreover, the action itself was challenging. This squat pulling and absorbing motion was also a bit unnatural, affecting force exertion. Duan Yun resolved, upon returning, to master absorbing true chi with his feet, making it more convenient for situations like this next time. Duan Yun was digesting Thunder God and Mother's thunder true chi, his eyes turning blood red. Thunder God and Mother noticed the anomaly, fear spreading across her eyes. For at this rate, a situation of mutual growth and decline could really appear, unless Duan Yun self-destructed. By right, a mere mortal should not withstand her true chi. But Duan Yun wasn't a typical mortal. He had long mastered demon electricity. Truly, nobody understands thunder and electricity better than him. Wasn't an exaggeration. And Duan Yun had indeed begun digesting her true chi. More horrifyingly, at that moment, the sickled mouth slanted to Thunder God and Mother's nose suddenly opened wide, shouting, "I want to be a hero!" Entering Duan Yun wasn't just Thunder God and Mother's true chi but also her memories. Thunder God and Mother lived above, among the clouds, those memories. These memories were cryptic, akin to the thunder language she left for the thunder listeners. For she originally came from those thunder language, and the traces she left in the human world were merely developments of her star fury. Yet from within these, Duan Yun understood some of her emotions. She wasn't only deeply concerned with beauty and ugliness but also extremely afraid of injury. It was unclear how long Thunder God and Mother had lived. Being considered an immortal wasn't a stretch, but perhaps living so long and wielding such divine power didn't come without costs. The cost was her inability to be wounded, or rather, the injuries of an immortal living long and seeing all are irreversible. Once injured to a certain extent, healing becomes impossible, potentially worsening throughout the body. Consequently, even if Thunder God and Mother won, she was genuinely crippled. Crippled even more than the legendary old demon Duan. At this moment, Duan Yun's eyes suddenly focused. He sensed Thunder God and Mother's total commitment to her emotions. Ah! 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 Thunder God and Mother roared. The flesh and blood inside her squeezed inwardly with madness. A snap sound, like a metal fastener being unhooked. Thunder God and Mother herself broke a section of her spine. Thus, the next instant, Duan Yun and Murong brothers felt a sudden release, as their bodies followed with the blade flying out. The story of the gecko breaking its tail to survive is well known among many children in the martial world, but this is the first time Duan Yun and Murong brothers have encountered a spine-breaking survival. The reason the Murong brothers made such a precise strike is that they knew this creature might not be so easy to kill, hence the spine-extracting decapitation. Because the spine was completely pulled out, even a true immortal would be powerless to reverse it. And in front of them, facing the deadly move from him and Duan Yun, Thunder God and Mother chose to break her spine to survive. She willingly broke her spine, and the upper half of it flew out along with the blood shadow mad blade. At this moment, her head and neck lost support and began to fall. It was then that the blood intestines that the Murong brothers had seen connecting to the Dart Master suddenly emerged, wrapping around her head and neck like wrapped dumplings. This prevented her upper body from going limp, but such an injury was truly horrifying. Even if Thunder God and Mother were an immortal, it was only a temporary measure. She could no longer control the 8 heavenly dragons, and the thunder chains on her body dissipated, causing the 8 heavenly dragons to run rampant here. Thus, the cloud world, which had been forged like an immortal court, began to collapse, with several thunder dragons sweeping towards Duan Yun and the Murong brothers. At this moment, the two did not need to exchange glances. Their minds were already in unison. All of their sword momentum was infused into the blood shadow mad blade, the blade full of distinctly colored sword chi. This sword chi seemed to be clearly different from each other, completely belonging to different species, but at this moment, it was extremely harmonious. Because the sword is the intent, sword intent is determined by human intent. In Duan Yun's imagination, as long as the sword technique improved further, the sword chi could even merge and produce new sword chi, abbreviated as sword chi intercourse. Duan Yun and the Murong brothers trusted each other, and so their distinctly different sword chi also trusted each other completely. The two raised their hands simultaneously and slashed. Break! The multicolored sword light tore through the approaching thunder dragon like a rainbow. It was this tearing that gave Duan Yun and the Murong brothers room. This was truly a slash that opened the path of life and death. The moment the sword chi was unleashed, Duan Yun, who still had remaining strength, deployed the electromagnetic sword field, enveloping himself and the Murong brothers. What followed was an explosion, a terrifying explosion. After losing Thunder God and Mother's control, the thunder dragons rampaged blindly like blind men. And when they collided, it triggered an apocalyptic explosion like heavenly fire, terrifying beyond measure. Leopard Print Aunt Shui couldn't find Xining and Feng Linger, but Xining and Feng Linger did manage to find traces of Duan Yun and the Murong brothers. It mainly happened when they arrived in Lining Mountain, initially having no clue because the entire forest was so vast, and the trees were overly lush. Suddenly, the earth shook and the mountains swayed, as if the ground was cracking and the sky was about to collapse. A massive cloud shot up from the ground, forming a mushroom shape, while countless lightning bolts burst out in the middle, setting the forests of Oldine Mountain on fire. Seeing this cloud emerging from the forest, Xining and Feng Linger knew that Duan Yun and the Morong brothers were probably there. Only they could orchestrate such a commotion. Or rather, even the two heroines who had accompanied them on many acts of justice had rarely seen such a spectacle. What Duan Yun orchestrated were grand scenes, from the distant graveyard blood battle to the recent city's distress, all of which could be talked about in the martial world for years to come. But this time, the scene was even more grandiose and exaggerated. First, this cloud was unusually large, and the commotion it caused was truly terrifying, with explosions, mountain fires, and earth cracks happening simultaneously, turning the sky blood-red like abyss hell. Duan Yun and the Morong brothers landed on the ground together, lying side by side like a pair of corpses. But soon they started coughing and gasping, indicating they were not dead. Half of Morong brothers' face was black, while Duan Yun was covered in ash, with only his underwear intact. Yet he still got up, looking at the mushroom cloud above, and angrily shouted, "Damn it, trying to run away." Saying so, he was about to step on his left foot to chase after. At this moment, the Morong brothers hurriedly grabbed him, saying, "Forget it, forget it. Let's plan long-term, plan long-term." Because he knew very well that although Duan Yun still had some strength left, he was also seriously injured. And he was even more seriously injured. In the mushroom cloud, Thunder God and Mother were bleeding non-stop, supporting her head with her hands to prevent collapse, unable to help but lament. "These two ugly people have harmed my foundation. I can only rest for 100 to 80 years before I can take revenge. This kind of injury for an immortal like her is almost impossible to reverse, and she can only make up for it from other places." Of course, she most hoped that these two extraordinary ugly men were blown to pieces. This should be the most humiliating time in her long memory-filled years. Without any hesitation, Thunder God and Mother's hair fell away, revealing numerous cracks on the entire head. As she opened her mouth, these cracks burst with thunder, emitting bursts of thunder-like sounds. In the Wangchun city area, the madman Lei of Thunder God and Mother sect suddenly heard this thunder, and the eyes of the new sect leader brightened, shouting, "Mother's divine oracle, old demon greatly wounded. Now is the time to slay demons and gain fame. Mother Wenro wants us disciples to make a name. Old demon greatly wounded. Kill, kill, kill. Kill, kill, kill." Though Thunder God and Mother harbored immense hatred, she knew she couldn't seek revenge in a short time, so she could only send out these disciples to disgust Duan Yun. Star Fury's life wasn't important, and anyway, in her current state, she couldn't play with Star Fury for the time being. Upon hearing the Morong brothers say to let it go and heal first, Duan Yun sat down and said, "Fine. Let that ugly fat woman live a few more months before killing her." He knew his injuries were extremely severe, perhaps the worst he had ever suffered, and it might take a whole season to fully recover. The Morong brothers said, "That ugly fat woman took a big hit this time. It might be hard to find her." Duan Yun replied, "That depends on whether she has the ability to discover my sword seed." "Sword seed?" The Morong brothers exclaimed in surprise. The Jade Sword True Understanding's Jade Sword could smell the scent of people practicing the same cultivation technique, essentially a kind of resonance. This time, my 10-layered spring rain fell all over her. Some have even planted seeds. I just need to improve Jade Sword into Spring Rain Remote, and then it won't be like searching for a needle in the sea to find her, Duan Yun explained. The Morong brothers spat out a mouthful of blood and said, "It seems once someone offends you, there's no escape, even if they run to the skies." When Feng Linger and Xining leapt over the raging mountain fire to find Duan Yun and the Morong brothers, the two were recovering from their injuries. Seeing that Duan Yun was injured, anger flared in Xining and Feng Linger's hearts. Xining directly looked at the mushroom cloud that had drifted away in the sky and said, "Was that dog thing over there?" Saying this, she was about to manipulate the 9-death silkworm silk to fly and kill the entire family of Thunder God and Mother. Seeing this, Feng Linger quickly said, "I'll go too." Duan Yun and the Morong brothers spoke in unison. "Forget it, forget it. Let's put out the fire first." The mountain fire came unexpectedly, and because the trees on Oldine Mountain were dense, the fire spread quickly. Xinying's fists were like cannons, creating trenches in the ground to isolate the fire, while Feng Linger's sword light swirled, similarly dividing the ground. But they were only two people and could only temporarily contain part of the fire. Soon enough, help arrived. This came from nearby farmers and martial artists who were previously digging the river. These people were renowned for training their bodies and strength, and most of the tasks assigned by Duan Yun before were related to earthwork, making this incident a good match for them. For example, the martial artists practicing earth-flipping palm dug through the soil at extraordinary speed, their entire bodies like giant earthworms rapidly burrowing through the earth, quickly forming trenches, akin to human excavators. Another example is the former brothel women unable to resume their old profession due to illness, who practiced the water clamping leg from flying water sect. They stood at the riverbank, with their legs clamping and releasing, launching water like cannonballs to extinguish the fire. They appeared here because after no longer being able to work in the brothels, someone hired them to help irrigate unsuitable fields, earning a decent amount. More and more martial artists joined the firefighting efforts. These people were all self-motivated, not all of them influenced by Duan Yun to become disaster relief heroes, but because the fire threatened their fields, and many of them had cultivated land there, they feared being affected. Duan Yun's proposal of using martial arts to cultivate land and produce showed its benefits here. The previously unstoppable-looking mountain fire quickly came under control by the manipulation of this group of martial artists and was soon subdued with the help of water. While the Jade Pearl heroes and the other martial artists were resting after extinguishing the fire, they suddenly heard a loud roar. The old demon is greatly injured. Eliminate the old demon. Proclaim Thunder's name. The time is now. Mother is invincible in the world above. The Thunder God and Mother sect, under the new sect leader's lead, charged at the greatly injured old demon with immense momentum. Yet, as they rushed at them like a group of scarabs, they suddenly froze in place. It was because they were a group, and the supposedly isolated and greatly injured old demon was also a group larger than theirs. Some had pointy heads, water-spewing legs, mud-spitting mouths, or even a panda practicing posture. Seemingly bizarre, but what scared them the most were the women. All the Jade Pearl heroes had arrived. Feng Linger raised an eyebrow, drew the red-faced sword, and said, "I want to kill 10. Ziyu said, "Then I want 11. Ning Qing said, "Then I want 13. Even Lei Ying, who just managed to join the table for a meal, said, "Then I want 14. Xining cracked her neck and said, "I'll take 28. Women love to compete, and the Jade Pearl heroes were no exception. Littleine muttered, "But there are only 48 of them in total." As soon as she finished her sentence, the group of women had already charged forward. The Thunder listeners of the Thunder God and Mother sect paused for a moment upon seeing these women charge at them like wolves and tigers. The new sect leader let out a sharp scream and said, "Mother cannot be wrong. They are all small fries. Kill them." The Thunder listeners were invigorated, and electricity sparked from their Thunder listening needles, faces full of confidence. Then, there was nothing more, except for the brief effective resistance from the sect leader who had been favored by Thunder God and Mother. The rest was a one-sided slaughter. After all, these Thunder listeners were just remnants and defeated generals scattered outside, and the backbones of their sect had long been mostly slaughtered by young hero Duan. This was undoubtedly a farce, even a joke that only added to the laughter, so much so that Thunder God and Mother didn't even manage to disgust anyone. After Thunder God and Mother's escape, the accumulated Thunder Day that had loomed over Wangchun City dissipated as well. Although they hadn't completely defeated Thunder God and Mother, they should be able to enjoy a good new year now. Indeed, this time of year, the new year wasn't far off. This should be the first prosperous year for heroic land. The area around Wangchun City is one of the rare fertile lands in Yun State, never short of bountiful harvests. But for so many people to have a prosperous year was unprecedented. Previously, fruitful harvests belonged to the Mo sect, having little to do with common folks, Even Jianghu people proficient in martial arts rarely got anything. No, Jianghu people who favored vice often had their skins flayed off. But this year, this place became heroic land, and the people's harvests became their own. Jianghu people gained well from selling their labor. Previously, the noble families were feasting while there were corpses of the starved in the streets. This time, every household was lit and decorated. Even the frail old beggars had a place to eat. The main reason was that every household had grain, allowing goodwill to be expressed. If everyone is on edge and barely making ends meet, there's no time for good deeds. Although there was still half a month until New Year, the festive atmosphere was already thick. Of course, this winter, although few beggars froze or starved to death, many people still died. Besides the evil demons that were purged, most others died with red eyes. Dying out of envy of others living better lives, the worse off couldn't stand that others thrived on assets they previously owned. In truth, while one's own end may be bitter, it's hard to accept the flourishing success of others with what was once your own asset sold off cheaply. Of course, their deaths were no more significant than that of just some flies. If in the past, they feared and skimped to save, there is no room for goodwill. But now, every household has food, and there's a space for goodwill to unfold. They no longer believe in ghosts or gods. Now, they only believe in young hero Duan. Hero Duan. Duan Juxia. The heroic land around Wangchun City truly lived up to its heroic name. Duan Yun and the Murong brothers began to heal their wounds. Feng Linger suspected that the Murong brothers were taking the opportunity to rest and avoid work, while in reality, they wanted to make a breakthrough. In the martial world, one could effectively stimulate self-improvement through intense battles and the insights gained after being wounded. Duan Yun once read in a novel where after two top swordsmen dueled on the Forbidden Peak, one died while the other entered a new realm. Back then, he thought this was a tall tale, but now he realized it was nothing short of the truth, because he was going through the same thing. In the confrontation with the Thunder God and Mother, he didn't gain much, but he also didn't suffer too much, and he's in an active state of extraordinary wisdom. He realized that to grow stronger, he could not afford to be negligent in his pursuit of stunning wisdom. This feeling was much like needing to relieve oneself urgently. Something big was coming his way soon, even more urgent than relieving himself. The sky had not yet brightened, the world engulfed in darkness, with no dawn in sight. At this time, even the roosters were still asleep, not thinking of crowing. Some roosters, upon waking, would crow, while others, upon waking, couldn't even muster a cluck, let alone a crow. At this moment, a large red-crested rooster had somehow a reed pipe placed on its head, and with the sound of intense sucking, the juices in the rooster's head were completely drawn into a person's mouth. The rooster's brain is small and is gone with a single suck, but this person was not only able to suck out the rooster's brain but also able to suck its blood. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the entire rooster was sucked dry. Yet it still wasn't dead like a worn-out rag bag, being thrown to the ground by that person. The sky darkened, the dim light illuminating the man's face, revealing a sharp and narrow mouth, bright eyes, and a piece of red meat resembling a crest atop his head. Forced to describe, he indeed looked quite similar to the rooster that hadn't quite died on the ground, because he himself was the chicken sign. Monkey Face Ho Wuya loves eating monkey brains, while Ji Siken enjoys devouring rooster brains. Rooster brains are small, but roosters are more common than monkeys. Thus Ji Siken always had more gourmet meals than Monkey Face. This was something he took pride in. But now Ji Siken showed no signs of pride. He was hiding within the shadows of a village chicken coop, clothes tattered, face covered in dust, barely different from a beggar, because he was on the run. Ever since he accidentally got hit by old demon Duan's punch, he suddenly wanted to become a hero, wanting to kill Gu Daoist. As a child, his mother was violated by Gu Daoist of the heavenly human Tao, and his mother suffered severe internal injuries because of this, leaving a significant mark on his heart. Later, he grew up, grew stronger, and became one of the feared 12 star signs, yet he still lacked the courage to confront Gu Daoist. Because Gu Daoist was truly powerful. The Taoists of the heavenly human Tao called themselves heavenly people, meaning celestial beings descended from heaven. They even established a Heavenly People City and Heavenly People Temple. In Heavenly People City, ordinary people were enslaved like livestock, and the same went for any martial world hero who arrived there. Because in the eyes of the Taoists of the Heavenly Human Tao, they were heavenly people, and everyone else was a lower species, no better than pigs and dogs. Many within the martial world had once objected to this notion, including some experts, but gradually there were none left. The martial world had accepted this claim, recognizing them as the heavenly people. It was like a forbidden place in the martial world, where even an emperor had to bow. For instance, places like Mingyu Palace, even an emperor would have few chances to approach. Heavenly People City was only a relatively open forbidden place, as Taoists of the Heavenly Human Tao frequently shared teachings, some of which included profound martial arts. So Heavenly People City was never short of dogs. These dogs outside were often lords and disciples from martial arts families. Yet to hear the teachings, they willingly became dogs. Such was the terror of the Taoists of the Heavenly Human Tao. Ji Siken knew well that with his brother's skills and temper, even against the Taoists of the Heavenly Human Tao, he'd have a go. For years he hadn't told his brother about this matter. Later, when his brother vanished, he had no one to tell, and he dismissed the thought of seeking revenge against Gu Daoist early on. He didn't dare. He not only lacked the capability, but he also didn't dare. But ever since old Demon Duan's punch, he dared. The strong desire to become a hero stirred him, pushing him to confront Gu Daoist. Because a hero acts. This was both to deal with his enemy and his inner demons. But what made him so miserable now wasn't Gu Daoist. Because when he arrived at Heavenly People City, Gu Daoist was already crippled. The reason was Gu Daoist, in pursuit of the Heavenly Tao, experimented with various animals, engaging in dual cultivation with more than 100, including poisonous snakes and fierce elephants. Reportedly, he had a continuous encounter with a black-haired giant elephant for a month, seemingly gaining some insight. But it wasn't the snakes or the elephants that crippled Gu Daoist. It was the second tower master of the Red House. Matched against the master of the Red House, though aging, Gu Daoist held his ground, even if the master was one of the most seductive women on earth. He fell by challenging Chan Di, the second tower master. The master's Chan Di of the Red House wasn't ordinary. It was a deadly poison to mortals. Yet Gu Daoist, for the sake of the Tao, dared to try it. Subsequently, fighting against the second tower master for 3 days and nights, he ultimately was defeated, with toxins erupting, leaving him crippled. When Ji Siken saw him, Gu Daoist was covered in dense cauliflower-like herpes, unable even to feed himself or drink. Ji Siken asked about the past involving his mother, but Gu Daoist remained utterly confused. Evidently, not only was Gu Daoist physically crippled, but he had also turned into a fool. Ji Siken didn't kill him, or rather, the heroic drive within him didn't urge him to kill, because killing such a cripple yielded no satisfaction. Instead, he found a beloved disciple of Gu Daoist, killed the disciple, and departed with ease. Of course, Gu Daoist wasn't the only Daoist in Heavenly People City, but even after Ji Siken killed Gu Daoist's disciple, no other Taoists came to trouble him for the time being. What Ji Siken didn't know was that, although the Taoists of the Heavenly Human Tao all claimed to be heavenly people, each had a different view of the Heavenly Tao, and so they had little camaraderie, often using each other to test their Tao to prove whose Tao was more correct and powerful. So even if Gu Daoist was killed by him, I'm afraid not many Taoists would seek trouble, let alone Gu Daoist's disciples. The Taoists of Heavenly People City have such indifferent feelings yet remain unshakable in the martial arts world. All because each Taoist seeking the path has solid skills. Without solid skills, one cannot become a heavenly person. After that, Chicken left Heavenly People City, resolved many years of inner demons, further advancing his power, and the fist technique he inherited from old Demon Duan had become very formidable. Just when Chicken Ji Siken thought his life was reaching a new peak, he encountered ghosts. They were several ghost children, nearly identical in appearance. The most famous ghost children in the martial world are under Ghost Mother's seat. The others are more or less inauthentic. But as one of the 12 star signs, theoretically, even if they were Ghost Mother's ghost children, he would not fear them. Especially now, having realized old Demon Duan's fist intent, his strength surged, and he had already begun seeking Monkey Face to join forces to kill old Demon Duan. Yes, that's the confidence he had. But the sudden emergence of the ghost children shattered his confidence. 3 ghost children with red braids, appearing as if real ghosts, elusive and very troublesome. As he fled all the way, the other side pursued persistently like fierce ghosts, even biting his foot. Chicken looked at the gaping wound on his foot with some fear. It was bitten by one of the ghost children, unsure if it was poisoned. He fled for so long and far, until now he found time to catch a chicken to regain some strength. Having fled this far, those ghost children shouldn't be chasing anymore, right? Chicken murmured. After all, ghosts have territories, and he'd fled across at least one province. It's unlikely that ghosts from Tianzhou would come to Qingzhou to kill, right? If so, that would be too vicious. This should be a mountain village within the borders of Qingzhou. Now all sounds of life were hushed. The remaining chickens in the coop must be too frightened to make a sound. Just as Chicken planned to pluck another chicken on his way, a burst of giggles sounded, quite clear in the quiet night. Chicken shivered all over. The laughter resembling a child's came from the ghost children, truly an unyielding presence. Raising his head, Chicken saw a head hovering above him. The face was powdered white, with blush on the cheeks, appearing like a paper effigy, especially terrifying in such a setting. Chicken couldn't help but let out a chicken-like screech, extending one leg, revealed the chicken foot, and with a golden chicken stand posture, dashed out. This is his unique movement technique, golden chicken flying egg, where his right foot uses the golden chicken stand to exert force, creating chi force like an egg, darting far away. From a distance, it looked like a chicken flying while laying eggs. Facing the ghost child at close range, Chicken Ji Siken used all his might to escape. He didn't even want to fight anymore, because these ghost children are unkillable. Several times, he seemed to have the upper hand, striking the opponent with punches and chicken foot, once even piercing his chicken foot into the other's chest. But the ghost child's body emitted strange black smoke, seemingly indifferent to pain or injury, launching a fiercer attack immediately. Such fearlessness. It's truly a ghost's nightmare. Chicken utilized his movement technique to escape, darting swiftly through the dark wilderness. Because the egg wind he created was too fierce, a field of gourds was shattered to pieces. Glancing back, Chicken saw the ghost child still chasing behind. The 2 braids on its head fluttered rapidly, indicating its high-frequency steps, easily keeping up with him despite short limbs. Having just consumed a rooster, his chi was restored quite well. His figure flickered, intending to speed up his escape. Suddenly, a shadow darted out from the field beside him, quickly knocking him to the ground. It was another ghost child. Chicken couldn't tell how many ghost children there were since they all looked alike. Faced with the ghost child at such close proximity, he instinctively raised his chicken claw, using divine chicken claw to grab the ghost child's chest. With a tearing sound, the clothing on the ghost child's chest, along with flesh, was torn away like paper. Yet it showed no reaction, shaking its head and approaching. He quickly swiped again, targeting the ghost child's face. But the ghost child ignored it, edging towards him unperturbed. "Ah!" Chicken involuntarily shouted. He thought it was about to bite his ear. In a rush, he threw a punch purely out of instinct between life and death, thus also merging the sense of wanting to be a hero. With a bang, the ghost child's temple was hit. Its head shattered into an illusion, rolling off with smoke emanating, becoming motionless. Just then, the ghost child behind lunged forward. He countered with a swipe of his sharp chicken foot. Chicken's chicken foot was actually his weapon, a shoe claw forged from black gold, resembling a chicken foot, extremely sharp, capable of killing with a mere swipe. Yet the ghost children were not ordinary, or rather, it was hard to tell if they were human or ghost and very hard to kill. This time, he didn't aim for vital points but hooked onto the braid of the ghost child with a claw, forcefully tossing it aside. This toss provided Chicken an opportunity to escape. Flipping into Golden Chicken's stand, he leapt away. Ahead, the ghost child he'd punched earlier lay motionless, smoke rising from its head, seemingly dead. Chicken couldn't help but wonder, is their weak point the temple? Just as he was about to leap over the body, the ghost child suddenly resurrected, leaping up like a toad. In this leap, the ghost child's head collided directly with his groin. His expression painful, he crashed to the ground again. The ghost child, succeeding with this attack, showed a sinister smile on its previously distorted face. Laughing, suddenly, the ghost child's gaze halted, exclaiming, "I want to be a hero." Both ghost child and Chicken were startled. Even though he'd made many shout, "I want to be a hero" during fights, hearing it now still startled Chicken, while the ghost child reacted more aggressively. Yet it quickly recovered, lunging at Chicken, along with the ghost child he had just thrown aside. Soon, another shadow flickered, another ghost child lunging forward. Chicken was resisting with all his strength, but when the third ghost child pressed on, he muttered internally, "It's over!" With the third ghost child pressing, his body was completely locked. What does this locked feeling resemble? Quite like sleep paralysis, yearning to move but powerless. For Chicken, it was more terrifying as he was indeed suppressed by ghosts. At that moment, two ghost children's faces were plastered to his ears. "Ah!" Chicken let out an even more miserable chicken cry. He believed his ears were doomed. But after the cry, he found no pain, only his ears itching. It turned out the two ghost children didn't bite his ears off but were licking fervently. At this point, Chicken noticed a black line on the nape of one ghost child. The line was so thin, visible only at such close proximity. Hanging from the red line was an ancient coin. Following the ink line with his gaze, he vaguely saw a figure. Is this the mastermind controlling the ghost children? That person stood in the field, remarkably tall, with a peculiar hat on his head. In that moment, Chicken suddenly realized something, shouting, "Boss! Is that you? Boss! You're really skillful. Stop messing with me. My ears are being licked raw." In the next moment, the ghost children retreated like dogs, crouching there. Chicken, still in shock, looked over, his eyes immediately reddening. The tall figure appeared flawless, like a celestial young master from a jade piece, yet wearing a strange hat, with two protrusions resembling mouse ears. Who else could it be but Rat Leader? Rat Fei's Wei Wuxing chuckled. "After all these years, you haven't improved much, except that punch was somewhat interesting." The chicken thought he was done for today, as his recent predicament was no different from a chicken pinned down by three weasels. But who could have expected? He actually experienced the delightful words, "a dramatic turn of events," and "a false alarm." These ghost children belonged to the Rat Leader. The leader was playing tricks on him. Rat Fei's enjoyed these pranks before he disappeared. Every time they were fooled, they would willingly or unwillingly say, "The leader played it well." It was a game among the 12 star signs. In Chicken's eyes, the 12 star signs had declined over the years. Leaving aside the brothers who were killed or maimed by the old demon Duan, even before his emergence, their infamous reputation was waning. The primary reason for this was the sudden disappearance of their leader, Wei Wuxing, the Rat Phase. Wei Wuxing often disappeared because his main job was tomb raiding, and half of his extraordinary skills came from his family, while the other half came from the endless tombs. According to Wei Wuxing, there were two martial worlds, one on the surface and one underground, and he had found the key to the underground martial world, allowing him to roam free on the surface. But that time, Wei Wuxing disappeared and never reappeared. The brothers of the 12 star signs generally believed Wei Wuxing met a grim fate, since tomb raiding was a deadly affair, especially for tombs with divine skills and treasures, which were extremely perilous. Even with the Wei family's ancestral expertise in tomb raiding, accidents were likely. After that, without their leader Rat to guide them, and with differing opinions among them, the 12 star signs scattered. They didn't make a big scene in the martial world, not because they couldn't, but because they didn't want to, much like Zhu Xiang, who was immersed in being with his wife every day. Though they didn't make a big scene, in their hearts, the 12 star signs still thought of themselves as demons who could visit the palace and sleep with imperial concubines. But the appearance of Duan Yun shattered their illusions. For over a decade, they hadn't been active in the martial world, and yet they couldn't even handle one old demon Duan. First, the peacock, the brother's mistress, was raped and killed. Then brother Zhu Xiang and his wife were also murdered by the old demon Duan. Especially since the sister-in-law was infamously dubbed for spilling urine on the golden sword. And when Chicken and Monkey Face tried to ambush old demon Duan, they ended up being outsmarted instead. This humiliation and disparity were too much for demons who used to do whatever they wanted. So, at this moment, seeing the return of their leader, Chicken Ji Sichen's eyes turned red. He seemed to see the days when they roamed the martial world. The leader's return meant everything was back. Chicken couldn't help but cry. The rat phase Wei Wuxing was still smiling, saying, "You're just a lone chicken. Why are you crying?" "Leader, it's been 10 years. Do you know how I've lived these 10 years? Especially in recent years. It's been too tragic." Then, like a woman, Chicken began to lament his miserable experiences to Wei Wuxing, especially how Duan Yun treated their brothers, their sister-in-law. He recounted in great detail all grievances. Wei Wuxing's expression didn't change much, murmuring, "I've only been gone for 14 years, and you ended up like this? Aren't you a bit useless?" Chicken quickly explained, "No, leader. It's not that we're weak. It's that demon is too strong." Wei Wuxing took off his rat hat, revealing his receding hairline. He possessed divine skill, his strength was astounding. If there was any flaw in his cultivation, it would only be that despite being handsome, he was going bald. He looked at Chicken and retorted, "Very strong? How strong? Stronger than me?" Chicken didn't respond, saying, "Nowadays, in the martial world, the fiercest demon is old demon Duan, and very few people mention you." He seemed to say nothing, but the implication was clear, suggesting that Wei Wuxing might not necessarily defeat Duan Yun, and having disappeared for so many years, his influence had greatly waned. Wei Wuxing showed little reaction, saying, "Before I went to the longest tomb this time, there were 2 women in Mingyu Palace I dared not provoke because they were martial arts legends, and I felt one person probably couldn't defeat them. This time I came back. I initially wanted to cause trouble for them, but you guys made such a mess." Wei Wuxing tidied the hair swirling around the edge of his head and said, "Are you guys like this even fit to be my brothers?" Chicken couldn't help but mutter, "But you once said you wouldn't abandon any brother." Wei Wuxing, with a matter-of-fact look, said, "But those without prospects, those who don't strive no longer deserve to be my brothers. So many years, have you reflected on whether you've worked hard in your practice, improved your martial arts? Otherwise, how could you end up so miserable?" Facing Wei Wuxing's argument, Chicken gradually lowered his head. Over these years, ever since they parted ways, they had indeed become lax and didn't work hard enough. Facing Chicken's silence, Wei Wuxing sighed. "Although my name contains the words Wuxing, I'm not a heartless person. Since you've lost face so badly in front of this old demon Duan, I'll get it back for you. Oh, and the peacock." At this moment, Wei Wuxing's eyes suddenly turned misty, filled with a sense of sadness. As he said, although his name contained the word Wuxing, he wasn't heartless. The taste of peacock remained in memory. Now, it seemed even reliving old dreams was impossible. At this moment, the sky began to lighten, though the world was still in darkness, and the 3 ghost children lay there, like dogs. Wei Wuxing suddenly began to sing. "The funeral of a rose, burying memories of you, feeling my hands numb, unable to help myself." The melody was quite unusual, something the Chicken had never heard before, but Wei Wuxing sang with great passion and emotion. "Peacock, this is the song I wrote for you, to commemorate you and our feelings." As he spoke, a tear of sorrow fell from his Mediterranean hair. Chicken couldn't help but praise, "Boss, you can compose songs and make them sound so beautiful." Wei Wuxing shrugged and said, "Of course, it's impromptu." Naturally, he hadn't written the song, nor was it impromptu, but he had heard it in a divine cave from a mysterious iron device, making it unforgettable. Who else but him could find and hear such a thing? It might as well have been created by him. Let's go. Let's get to work. As Wei Wuxing spoke, he already stood on the three ghost children. The chicken's eyes narrowed, and he said, "Boss, you're finally going to lead us back to the peak." Wei Wuxing gave a wicked smile and said, "Back then wasn't the peak at all. At most we were halfway up the mountain. I'll show you what the real peak is." As he spoke, he flicked his fingers, and the three ghost children shot out like arrows. The chicken froze for a moment, watching the rapidly receding rat phase, and yelled, "Boss, wait for me. I haven't gotten on yet. I haven't gotten on yet. And there's the monkey and the others." The funeral of a rose, burying memories of you. Feeling my hands numb, unable to help myself, unable to hold you. The Rat Phase's original song was now drifting through Yuzhu Manor. Duan Yun lay on the bed, humming the song. I must say, being injured is a very unique experience. Not only does it stimulate talent, but it also gives time to think. To think about the past, seemingly meaningless yet meaningful things. Just like this song. This song was one he was quite familiar with before crossing over. He didn't particularly like it, just found it pleasant. And after hearing it a few times he could hum along. This made him recall the times before he crossed over. Unconsciously, he had been in this world for several years. Felt like a different lifetime. He seldom thought about things before crossing over unless the leisure and boredom of healing led him to hum a song. Otherwise, he wouldn't even think about these things. It's like when people are bored and aimless, they often reminisce about the past, like their first love, or old friends they haven't contacted in years, recalling those youthful days. Duan Yun couldn't quite remember what his first love looked like. Only the feeling. That feeling of always being at school in the summer. Recalling a summer that feels like a different lifetime during a winter snow is indeed a special experience. Duan Yun wasn't particularly sentimental because he had gained much here too. Friendships between men and women, and even feelings that blurred the line between friendship and love. He couldn't remember what his first love looked like, but he knew clearly that his first love wasn't as beautiful as any of the women in the manor, including the two female mounts. If he could choose now, if he could return to Earth, he wouldn't necessarily want to go back. Because here he has friends and a career, and moreover, he has acquired impressive abilities. This world is indeed very bad, worse than Earth, full of deceit and murder. But here, he has the ability to make it better. Unlike before, where he mostly drifted along, living a mundane and unimpressive life. Let alone change the world. Changing himself was difficult enough. But here he could. He even had a vision of changing the world. Because he had power. Power! Duan Yun clenched his fist and looked outside. At that moment, another person was also lying in the room, looking outside. The Murong lay there, lost in thought. They had been recuperating with Duan Yun during this time. Duan Yun couldn't help but ask, "What are you looking at?" The Murong replied, "I'm counting how many icicles are under the eaves." Duan Yun asked in confusion, "Why are you counting that?" "Just passing time. I think when I count 300, it'll be meal time." Duan Yun asked, "And how many are there now?" 292. By the time he counted to 298, footsteps could be heard outside. Aunt Shui with leopard prints and Laying appeared outside simultaneously and said, "It's time to eat." So Duan Yun and the Murong rode their mounts to dine. Although Aunt Shui had played a vital role last time by warning them, indirectly saving the Murong's life, the Murong once thought his snow leopard far surpassed Duan Yun's mount. But when faced with a real comparison, the Murong still felt Lei Ying and Little Een were better. Using Aunt Shui as a mount was something he accepted wholeheartedly, while if it were Lei Ying and Little Een, he wouldn't refuse even if he was to be used as a mount. That's the difference. Yuzhu Manor is now divided into 3 levels. The top tier is naturally the Jade Pearl heroes, led by Duan Yun, with no distinctions among them since they're all like-minded friends. The bottom tier is, of course, creatures like Little Gray and the Horse. Originally, Little Een, Aunt Shui, and Laying belonged to the creature tier, but due to their excellent performance, having contributed much to heroic land, they successfully advanced a tier to become servants. The Jade Pearl heroes dine at the large table while the three of them eat at the small table, and Little Gray and Big White eat outside. It's already the coldest month of winter, and the Yuju Manor is filled with the atmosphere of the new year. The festive atmosphere isn't embodied in decorations but is truly reflected in the flavors. At this time, the air is filled with the scent of cured meat, sausages, and cured fish. From the 3 layers of cured meat and sausages hanging outside the kitchen, which even covered the windows, it's obvious this is a wealthy family. Today's chef is Shening. The dish is cured meat cuisine. Sausages, cured meat, and cured fish are cooked, taken out, and then cut up to make a big platter of cured flavors. This is a standard of how good ingredients only need simple cooking to make one's appetite soar as soon as they are put on the table. Next is Shun Ying's specialty, braised lion's head. Actually, Shun Ying's braised lion's head was only considered home-cooked in flavor, but her skill in making them was unmatched. This was all thanks to her fist power. Her fist power easily infiltrates the pork, breaking the meat inside to form tiny lumen. When you take a bite, the lion's head is filled with juice. If bitten strongly, the juice even squirts, giving people a feeling of being rejuvenated, like skinny dipping on a beach. Thus Shun Ying's braised lion's head was also called spraying lion's head. Once this dish was placed on the table, everyone scrambled for it. Immediately after, the sound of the lion's head, spraying, was heard. Those eating were absorbed in the deliciousness of the lion's head, while almost simultaneously grabbing empty bowls. Sizzle, sizzle. The juice flying across the table was like a battle of archery, blocked by everyone's bowls. If anyone was careless, they would end up with a face full of it. Just like little Ian, who was only focused on eating and ended up with a face full of it from laying beside her. Did you do it on purpose? How could I have time to do it on purpose? Do you want this one? If not, I'll take it. That's mine. Due to the fewer portions at the servant table, there was even food grabbing occurring. A chef's greatest achievement should be seeing their dishes so welcomed. Now Shening was in such a mood. She sat there, her hair still tied up, looking every bit like a beautiful little chef. Then she suddenly noticed Duan Yun looking at her and said, "Why are you looking at me like that?" "I'm not a meatball," Duan Yun asked. "Aren't you feeling uncomfortable there?" Shening asked, confused. "Where is uncomfortable?" Then, her heart skipped a beat when she realized Duan Yun was looking straight at her chest. Facing Shun Ying's questioning, Duan Yun said with a serious face, "Why do I feel like the chi blood in your chest isn't flowing smoothly?" Shun Ying quickly covered her steel-like chest and said, "Who said it's not smooth? Just move your hand away, and I'll know if it's smooth. I'm a professional," Duan Yun explained. Logically speaking, with Shadow Ying's level of cultivation and without any injury, it's almost impossible for her to have a chi blood blockage. But under his expert gaze, the area in Shun Ying's heart indeed showed a chi blood blockage. This might be a problem from practicing martial arts, and it's crucial to identify and treat it early. Saying this, he attempted to bypass Shun Ying's hands to continue his observation and proceed to the next step. Doctors rely on observing, listening, questioning, and feeling the pulse. Merely observing is not enough. Shun Ying strongly refused, her flat chest already well protected by her tightly wrapped arms. "You're avoiding treatment because of ignorance. That's not acceptable. I'm a professional, and in front of a professional doctor, there's no distinction between men and women. Besides, we're so familiar, I won't charge you money." Saying this, he tried to pull Shun Ying's hands away to continue the examination. "Ah!" A piercing scream was heard as Shun Ying kicked out. Duan Yun, caught off guard, was sent flying straight from the kitchen through the courtyard and landed outside the main gate. A moment later, Duan Yun complained, "This is a serious case of avoiding treatment due to ignorance." Shening still refused to let him see. Feng Linger couldn't help but mock. "You're even flatter than a man who would want to look at that." With that, she removed her outer garment, revealing her voluptuous curves. Indeed, currently, Shin Ying's skills are second to none among the Yuju, but when it comes to femininity, she can't even compare to a man. Seeing Feng Linger showing off, Green Jade, Tang Wanwan, and Laying each removed their outer garments, each bigger and more dramatic than the last. The women showed off in front of Shining, exchanging contemptuous glances. Their eyes seemed to say, "Foxy wench, showing off so boldly, truly shameless." But each one tried to outdo the other in showing off. It was the dead of winter, but due to fierce competition, most heroine were dressed in autumn outfits, and once the outer garments were removed, they were dressed for summer. Even the youngest, little Een, adjusted her clothes to show off in front of Shining. Faced with this scene of rising peaks, Shining angrily said, "Eat. If you won't eat, get out. Wanna show off, do ya? I'll beat you up real good. Let's see if you'll still show off then." Seeing Shining angry, Feng Linger was even more satisfied, mocking, "Some people are just jealous." Exactly. Laying pulled her collar down a bit, making her cleavage more prominent. Just as little Een was about to puff her chest, Shining suddenly grabbed her arm and swung. Ah! Little Een instantly flew like a cannonball towards the graveyard, followed by the sound of bamboo being crushed. Shining said irritably, "A brat who hasn't even grown all their hair yet dares to challenge me?" Shining has always been the least class-conscious. When everyone treats little Een and Laying as mere mounts, she always treated them as people. Because even though her fists are incredibly fierce, her heart has always pursued peace and tranquility, which is why she liked to wear the Lotus Taoist robe in the past. Even true ascetic Taoists in this world may not be as tranquil as her. But this time, she pulled rank and even took action against little Een. It could only mean she was really mad. This cooled down the showcasing women significantly. They were well aware that now they might not be able to handle this shadow woman. If this woman lost her temper, it might not be possible to bust their large breasts, but inflicting some injuries as event was very likely. So everyone stopped showing off and started eating. One could say the women of Yuju Manor do not have small tempers. One could almost compare them to the Tigress Yun Yu always talks about, but now it seems the real tigress is Shining. After dinner, Feng Linger whispered with a yin-yang tone, "The smaller the chest, the bigger the temper. When my swordsmanship is perfected, I'll show off in front of you every day." Snowflakes drifted from the sky, not enough to cloak the world in white, only bringing a damp cold chill. This kind of ghostly weather is most comfortably enjoyed by staying indoors, especially after a meal, offering a special feeling of happiness. The people of Wangchun City, many have not enjoyed this feeling for most of their lives. But this year they got to enjoy it, with full bellies and grain and vegetables stored in the granaries. The feeling of abundance allows them to lie around freely this moment, even though this way of lying around makes them feel guilty. During the tax collection season, they work desperately because it's the only way they can barely get by, and now that it's not tax season, they work desperately because the food grown is theirs. Why not work hard? Although it's all being worked hard, the feeling is completely different. And this year's hardships have proven worth it, allowing them to enjoy long-lost happiness in this severe cold weather. But while thousands of families are cozied up at home, enjoying themselves, someone is still bathing in the dark bamboo grove's pool. Shun Ying's body was submerged in the icy water, yet even in the dim surroundings, her towering curves were faintly visible. She clenched her teeth and swung a fist. The pool water split in two. Even the fish inside were thrown out, landing on the shore while still steaming, emitting a grilled fish aroma. Full of anger, Shun Ying couldn't help but complain. With this much entanglement, it'd be a miracle if the chi blood flows smoothly. She didn't expect that her art of concealing her chest would still have flaws. No matter how much she calculated, she didn't expect this guy to be a gynecologist who likes to look at people's chi blood. Didn't this guy's eyes used to be this sharp? Shining couldn't help but wonder. Thinking of the arrogant demeanor of those women during lunch today, Shining felt an impulse of, "I'm not pretending anymore. I'll reveal my cards. I'm big busted." Yes, among them, the overly lively Linger was no match for her at all. In this group, the only one who could compare with her would be Laying. To hide or not to hide? That is the question. Shining soaked in the water, troubled. At this moment, The pond had already calmed down. The fish in the pond seemed to be mesmerized by her beauty, even though one of their companions had just been punched into submission. Some were still swimming nearby. From here, Shun Ying's troubled eyes looked like autumn water, very beautiful. Of course, I should keep pretending. How else would I know if it's true love? Shun Ying puffed her cheeks and muttered. She wanted to prove that, even if she was flat, Duan Yun would still like her. The kind of liking the most. Or, to put it another way, a woman's competitive nature tells her that even if she binds her chest as flat as a field, she can still defeat any woman. However, thinking that Duan Yun had already developed a thief's intent, Shun Ying couldn't help but be more cautious. So before binding her chest, she added a layer of white silk clothing around her body. The white silk was extremely thin, but it was even more effective than the most famous soft hedgehog armor in the martial world. This was the ingenuity of the 9-death silkworm dream silk. At least in terms of defense, it's unique. Shun Ying looked down at her heart wrapped in white silk, thinking that even if Duan Yun tore off her clothes, she still had this layer, and couldn't help but feel a little relieved. But in the next moment, her cheeks turned extremely red. This was just a thin layer of silk. What's the difference from wearing nothing? No, it's even more than wearing nothing. At this moment, Shun Ying couldn't help but think of Duan Yun's newly accepted good disciple Tang Wanwan. This annoying woman liked to dress vaguely like this. In some sense, it was indeed more tempting than not wearing anything. Even as a woman, she sometimes felt a bit tempted. One can only say that the number of vixens at Yuzhu Manor is indeed increasing. Thinking of this, Shun Ying couldn't help but sigh, floating on the pond like a corpse. While Shun Ying was floating like a corpse, Duan Yun was indeed plotting in the manor. In front of him were his good disciple Tang Wanwan and essential travel companion Lei Ying. Looking at the two of them, he pondered, there's really something wrong with Shun Ying. No, I can't let her continue to avoid treatment. If I don't do something and she really has a problem, she might regret it for the rest of her life. Duan Yun decided to thoroughly observe, smell, question, and feel the pulse on Shun Ying. So he looked at Tang Wanwan and Lei Ying and said, when Shun Ying comes back, you both trap her from the left and right. Tang Wanwan seemed confused and asked, how to trap? Of course, use body techniques to trap. Can't you use the grapple skill? Duan Yun retorted. Tang Wanwan pitifully pointed to her own nose and said, my dear master, you want me to trap Shun Ying? Not to mention that her strength was already far inferior to Shun Ying. Her expertise was in the tool techniques of the Tang sect. How could she compete in close-quarters combat with that boxing girl without getting beaten up? Duan Yun couldn't help but look at Lei Ying and said, isn't Lei Ying also here? Lei Ying retorted, my dear master, Shun Ying's fist technique is probably beyond even yours. You're overestimating us by asking us to trap her. Even though Tang Wanwan and Lei Ying usually didn't get along, after all, they were competing for the title of the best weapon in 2 prefectures. They couldn't help but stand on the same side at this moment, nodding fervently. If they really went to trap Shun Ying, getting slightly injured would be the least of their worries. It might even be heavily injured. Duan Yun sighed. You all claim to be the best weapons of all time, yet you can't even handle this? No, even if the skill is lacking, you don't even have the courage? Tang Wanwan and Lei Ying said very consciously, no. You two have disappointed me so much. You are the worst batch of female heroes I've ever trained. Duan Yun originally wanted to reprimand them. For the path of a hero, victory belongs to the brave. If they don't even have the courage to draw their swords, how can they win? You can take your time being disappointed. I forgot to do the laundry, Lei Ying said. Tang Wanwan, seeming to suddenly understand, said, oh right, I haven't brushed my teeth yet. Saying this, the two of them slipped away. Seeing this, Duan Yun couldn't help but stretch his neck and sighed. Looks like I'll have to handle this on my own after all. Sigh, but Shadow Ying is so sensitive. Clearly it's just a regular medical examination. But she always thinks I'm taking advantage of her. I, Duan Yun, am pure and noble, with a medical practitioner's compassionate heart. No matter how big a thunderstorm she has, I wouldn't think to take advantage of her, let alone she's so small. Seriously. Duan Yun felt a bit vexed too. This matter was indeed open to misunderstanding. Use illusion technique? But now Shining was clearly the top combat power among the Jade Pearl heroes. In some sense, even the Murong brothers couldn't match her strength, plus she was very alert. He had previously tested illusion techniques on them, and this group of people had become exceedingly clever. As soon as a sound wave flickered in their minds, they could sense it was an illusion, making it hard to execute. It would be great if I knew hypnotism. Duan Yun couldn't help but mutter, because at that moment, he recalled a certain type of action movie from his previous life, where the most famous skill was hypnotism. Once hypnotism was activated, the heroine could only be at the mercy of others. With no power to resist, it was very handy. And in those action movies, this technique was used for nefarious deeds, but at this moment, he was thinking about how to treat someone. It just shows his kind intentions. Duan Yun thought all around, the method similar to hypnotism seemed to be the gentlest way. So he fixed his gaze and muttered to himself, "Extraordinary wisdom. It's time to create a new martial arts. Hypnotism technique. Activate." No, the name hypnotism technique doesn't sound good. Nor is it martial arts-like. Enchantment technique. Come to me. Concerned that Xin Ying's qi blood stagnation might be symptoms caused by her martial practice. Yet she's resistant to treatment. The well-intentioned Duan Yun resolutely chose to go into seclusion. Actually, in this situation, time-stop technique would be more useful than hypnotism, but Duan Yun also knew very well, in this relatively scientific martial hero world, the difficulty of time-stopping was much greater than hypnotism, even if he had extraordinary wisdom. Thus, Duan Yun decided to cultivate hypnotism, also known as his enchantment technique. You ask if this can be achieved? Isn't that nonsense? Duan Yun had absolute confidence in this because since coming to this world, he had already had too many successes. It's like some famous authors in the previous life, the moment they named their books, the rights were already sold. And he was in a similar situation. This young hero even had the name of his martial arts ready. How could he not master it? It's only a matter of enduring a few more sleepless nights. Upon hearing that Duan Yun went into seclusion in the cellar, refusing even dinner, the heroes within Yuzhu Manor had varied expressions. Morong couldn't help but retort, "Can't he wait until after the new year to comprehend?" Yes, everyone agreed to feast and drink and sleep soundly during the new year, seeking leisure. But this old demon Duan, lacking martial virtue, wanted to retreat into seclusion even before the new year was over. This left them in a quandary. They couldn't continue to be leisurely, yet they had nothing much to comprehend if they joined in, truly, between a rock and a hard place. Tang Wanwan understood this feeling well. It was like when she cultivated alongside the inner sect disciples of the Tang sect. She had a junior sister whose strength was already impressive, and yet she continued to practice while others slept, causing the rest to be unable to sleep. As summarized by the Tang sect elder, if someone better than you works harder than you do, can you still sleep? That period was the toughest time for Tang Wanwan. The most extravagant experience was when she stood asleep, dreaming, her hands still throwing darts, and upon waking, she found all hits were dead on. Now, the Jade Pearl heroes faced the same situation. At night, Morong brothers, becoming more and more awake instead of sleeping, couldn't help but retort, "How can old demon Duan be so wicked?" Facing Shun Ying's stubbornness, Duan Yun decided to create his own hypnotism technique. Yes, the more wuxia-like enchantment technique he's been talking about. To begin, Duan Yun wasn't completely clueless, because the illusion technique, Moon Dream Heart Sutra, had already provided him with some ideas. The reason Moon Dream Heart Sutra can cause hallucinations is that his brainwaves are strong enough, vibrating intensely, that others' minds are quickly influenced by his brainwaves, thus creating illusions. This move was actually quite effective, but because Shining and the others had been specially trained by him, they became more astute, so it couldn't penetrate without fail. As a doctor who needs to observe, listen, question, and feel the pulse, he needs a patient to obey. Hypnosis is the most effective, especially if it can meet certain cinematic standards. That would be perfect. So, Duan Yun started analyzing hypnosis, which requires a person to sleep, and then proceed with hypnotism once they are asleep. Duan Yun thus first focused the method on sleep. There are many ways to make someone sleep, such as using drugs or poisons, or the historically famous sleeping red tea, or a heavy blow to the back of the head, ensuring deep sleep. But Duan Yun didn't want this kind of sleep. He needed Shen Ying to obey. So Shen Ying couldn't be deeply asleep, it had to be a light sleep state. Moreover, using drugs likely wouldn't work either. Masters at Shen Ying's level are practically immune to poisons, and as a young hero, he wasn't skilled in administering drugs or poisons. This is a delicate task, and his extraordinary wisdom couldn't help but think, if using Moon Dream Heart Sutra to constantly create the illusion of drowsiness, wouldn't the person end up sleeping? Moreover, the degree of sleep could be controlled by him. This was like refining the Moon Dream Heart Sutra into a branch. Diving deeper, maybe it would work. This idea reinvigorated Duan Yun. After all, it was like standing on his own giant's shoulder, taking it a step further. Duan Yun decided to give it a try. He decided to first find a guinea pig, put the guinea pig to sleep first, then deal with Shen Ying. The people were forced to focus because Duan Yun was in seclusion, until suddenly, with a bang, Duan Yun emerged from the basement. Lei Ying exclaimed, "You were only in seclusion for an hour." Duan Yun replied, "I need to pee. Even in seclusion one eats, pees, and sleeps." With that, he headed towards the restroom. Lei Ying said with an expression of frustration, "Can you really call it seclusion when you're doing everything? Why don't you play a few rounds of mahjong? It's all seclusion anyway." Duan Yun didn't hear her complaints and went to the restroom. After coming out, he called Tang Wanwan to accompany him to the basement. Seeing this, Lei Ying was shocked again. "You bring someone while in seclusion?" Duan Yun nodded and said, "Yeah." With that, he went to the basement with Tang Wanwan. Lei Ying quickly informed everyone about the situation. Fenglinger, Shen Ying, and Ziyu didn't look pleased. He said he was going into seclusion, yet it involves eating, drinking, and going down with a pretty woman. Surely he's doing something else? Lei Ying said, clearly frustrated. The Murong brothers were enraged. He's taking a pretty girl down. Is that seclusion? That's indulgence. Little Ying stirred the pot. He takes Tang Wanwan down, but not any of you. It seems you seniors can't match the newcomers. In truth, she herself was upset, feeling Duan Yun was fickle for not bringing her. But comparisons are inevitable. Comparing them, Fenglinger and others, who have been by old Demon Duan's side from the start, were worse off. When others are miserable, she feels at ease. At this time, Fenglinger casually walked outside as if nothing had happened. Actually, she wasn't indifferent or frustrated. She just remembered something else. There was an underground tunnel outside that connected directly to Duan Yun's basement. Previously, Ning Qing and the Murong brothers had dug a tunnel to evade Mingyu Palace, connecting it to Duan Yun's basement, which she knew of, and the tunnel entrance was in a shabby courtyard not far from Yuzhu Manor. She wanted to see if Duan Yun truly was in seclusion down there. If not, she'd lose her mind. There's no martial training without madness. Even female warriors go mad given the right circumstances. Especially someone like Fenglinger, whose situation might be more severe. Or perhaps the Murong family's bloodline naturally leads one to emotional insanity. It was because of this that Fenglinger was once known as Red-Face Flower Fool, while another Murong sister, Fu Wanjun, was called White-Haired Witch. Yet this was only the tip of the iceberg for the sisters. Most likely it all has to do with the Murong family bloodline. Fenglinger even had an early premonition. If she ever went insane, her swordsmanship would significantly improve. That would lead to an entirely new martial arts realm. But she hadn't. Because insanity isn't a good thing, martial madmen in the martial world rarely meet good ends. Yet at this moment, Fenglinger moved ahead with determination. Those who don't even dare to go mad dare to compete with me? Just as Fenglinger was heading towards the entrance, Duan Yun's experiment had already begun. Faced with Tang Wanwan, who seemed a bit nervous, but smiled sweetly, Duan Yun decisively activated the Moon Dream Heart Sutra. His demon electricity surged from the soles of his feet to the top of his skull. causing his brain and body to emit tremors barely detectable to the naked eye. These tremors passed through the brain, forming subtle ripples that spread out like a ripple, immediately affecting Tang Wanwan. "I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted. I want to sleep." Duan Yun infused this thought into the process, but not aggressively. To induce a shallow slumber, one must not rush or apply too much force. Yet after a moment, he noticed Tang Wanwan still watching him with her beautiful big eyes open. Duan Yun asked, "Wanwan, don't you feel like sleeping at all?" Tang Wanwan yawned and said, "It seems like a little bit." "A little bit?" Duan Yun replied, puzzled. Tang Wanwan was also confused. Clearly, being alone with Duan Yun, a man and a woman in a room with her skills, she might end up becoming his wife. Yet at this moment, she felt a bit sleepy. However, her desire to sleep was insignificant compared to the presence of Duan Yun, so it was only a little. At this moment, Tang Wanwan had a sudden insight and said, "Good master, do you want me to fall asleep?" "Oh dear, I'm really getting sleepy." Saying this, she shrugged her shoulders. Her eyes hadn't closed yet, but her outer robe slid off before she did. With a slightly tipsy demeanor, in this dim environment, her skin was white as jade, possessing a breathtaking beauty. Even someone with a heart of stone would feel a tenderness upon seeing such a woman. Duan Yun did not feel tender because he realized that she wasn't truly sleepy. This proved that his training's effectiveness was poor, which made Duan Yun very annoyed. "Extraordinary wisdom. What are you doing? Why can't you even put someone to sleep?" Compared to a woman's beauty, Duan Yun clearly valued his training results more. Now that the results were poor, he had no time to care about anything else. One could say, the more Tang Wanwan teased him with her scheming, the more furious he became, because this was a challenge to his extraordinary wisdom. "Won't sleep, huh?" Duan Yun quickly realized the problem was his gradual approach, trying to strike the perfect balance, resulting in the inadequacy in the vibration strength of the brainwaves. Insufficient strength means the influence is small, and naturally the effect was poor. Thus, in the moment his anger surged, he immediately increased the intensity. "I'm so tired. I really want to sleep. If you don't sleep, you'll die." Strong brainwave tremors formed again, and Duan Yun even added the effect of Ming Chao. The Moon Dream Heart Sutra can induce hallucinations. Scientifically speaking, it's the brainwave tremors formed by the practitioner's strong thoughts that affect other people's minds, thereby creating hallucinations. Illusions begin with oneself, that is to say, if Duan Yun's thoughts aren't strong enough, he can't affect others at all. This is why he wouldn't use this move until the end, because it consumes his brain power and energy, making him very tired. At this moment, Duan Yun's desire to sleep surged to the sky and spread. "Charge for me!" Because the intention was too intense, the originally invisible brainwave ripples suddenly seemed to become tangible, crashing into Tang Wanwan's mind. Tang Wanwan's beautiful eyes widened. Then she half yawned. Why was it half a yawn? Because she hadn't finished yawning before the brainwave had overpowered her to sleep. Not just the nearby Tang Wanwan, even others outside the Yuzhu Manor cellar were also overwhelmed to sleep in that instant. The Murong brothers were urinating in the latrine when their bodies stiffened and fell forward, one side of their heads dropping into the pit, snoring away. Shining, initially frustrated by Tang Wanwan's matter, was eating to relieve her distress, but her mind softened and her face ended up in the rice bowl. Laying, Little Een, Ning Qing, and Ziyu weren't spared either, collapsing asleep. Dabai, who had been practicing his punches, threw a punch, and the bear started snoring. In fact, not just them but even earthworms on the ground, busy turning the soil, suddenly stopped moving. And Duan Yun himself also went into a deep sleep. After all, the powerful desire to sleep was emitted by him, and he pushed this intention to its limits, even turning it into reality. So he couldn't avoid it, fell asleep next to Tang Wanwan. Inside Yuzhu Manor, everyone was asleep. Even the earthworms weren't spared, while only Feng Linger, who was digging a tunnel, avoided this overwhelming force. Duan Yun's telekinesis fluctuations were intense only in the Yuzhu Manor area, and Feng Linger happened to be outside at that time. At this moment, Feng Linger had already skillfully traversed the tunnel, reaching its end. From there, she could already see the golden lamp inside Duan Yun's cellar. Since moving the Gu family's Gold Mountain and Silver Mountain here, the lamp, chair, and even the toilet in this cellar were gold. Feng Linger held her breath because she knew well that with Duan Yun's cultivation and Tang Wanwan's sensitivity, if she made even a bit of noise, they could notice. But after waiting a while, there wasn't a sound inside. What are they playing at? Ultimately, Feng Linger couldn't resist her curiosity and poked her head out. With this peek, her pupils turned green, like cat eyes, because what met her gaze was the scene of Duan Yun and Tang Wanwan lying together. When her pupils turned green, her ponytail fluttered, and the red face sword in its sheath intensified in color, looking akin to blood, streaming through the sheath. This was a sign that she was strongly agitated, showing signs of going berserk. If Shining were the one lying there, she'd be slightly more tolerant, because she always considered her the strongest rival. Though she'd be unsatisfied losing to Shining, she could somewhat accept it. But this little flirt from the Tang family suddenly overtook her, and she couldn't handle it, especially since this young girl had called her master just that morning. Is this how you treat your master? Feng Linger was no longer calm. She silently walked over, hand on her sword hilt, intending to give Tang Wanwan a harsh lesson. But as she approached, she suddenly paused. Because at this moment, Duan Yun and Tang Wanwan were breathing steadily. They're both sound asleep? Duan Yun that quickly. Wait, they haven't taken off their pants? Or did they put them back on after finishing? The sight of Duan Yun and Tang Wanwan asleep made her wonder as she checked for signs. Their belts showed no evidence of removal. Did they finish without even taking off their pants? Feng Linger asked, shocked. If Feng Linger had been intensely agitated earlier, agitated enough to go crazy, she now felt mentally blank. Or perhaps, experiencing a temporary shutdown, finding two people asleep with untouched pants in front of her seemed absurd, even eerie. Feng Linger planned to discuss the situation with acquaintances, hoping to unravel her thoughts. So she stepped over Duan Yun and Tang Wanwan, and upon leaving the cellar, an even more bizarre sight greeted her. Everyone inside Yuzhu Manor, including the livestock, was asleep. Her first thought was poison. Someone used poison here, causing everyone to succumb, and only she, tunneling through, escaped disaster. Thus she immediately chose to hold her breath, clutching her sword hilt, adopting a serious demeanor. If it weren't for the fact that everyone was still snoring, she would have suspected that the manor's people and animals were poisoned to death. Considering even Panda Dabai was a skilled fighter in this manner, she couldn't grasp what poison could incapacitate everyone. Not even the Tang sect known for its poisons or the great Inyang Daffodil sect could achieve this, especially since Tang Wanwan herself was a Tang sect expert with highly sensitive senses. A full column of incense time passed, and still no sign of enemies in the surroundings. So Feng Linger kicked Shining. After kicking 3 times, with the final kick slightly feeling like carrying a personal grievance, Shining slowly surfaced, her head rising from the food bowl. Yawning, Shining said, "I'm so tired." Then she noticed the food smeared on her face. Alarmed, "How did I fall asleep?" Afterwards, she was engulfed in the same absurd feelings as Feng Linger. The Murong brothers were the last to awaken. Because after everyone was called to wake, the Murong brothers were nowhere to be found. Inside the manor, the only places not yet searched were the men's restroom and baths. Murong brothers were awakened by Duan Yun while twisting around like maggots. Soon after, their shrill cry echoed. Then, they saw Duan Yun's surprised and disgusted face. Murong pointed at Duan Yun, using the fiercest tone. "You mustn't tell anyone about this. Henceforth, whatever you say, I will obey." Yes, being the well-known green saber young hero in the martial world, identity and face are self-given. Murong's face was painfully contorted. "Is there something wrong with me? How did I fall asleep in the restroom? I didn't even flush." Moreover, with my constitution, even if I flushed vigorously, I shouldn't fall asleep like this. The Morong brothers often say that they are as famous as young hero Duan. Many of his round-faced, bushy-bearded supporters say the same, which has some elements of exaggeration. However, there is not much dispute that he is the number 2 figure at Yuju Manor. Moreover, he has aspirations to claim the top spot. But this time, after falling asleep in a latrine, he completely lost his voice in front of Duan Yun. Because if Duan Yun spreads the story, he might lose the right to kiss, or even the right to marry. The Morong brothers cleaned themselves inside and out, pretending as if nothing had happened. At this moment, everyone was discussing why they suddenly fell asleep. Have you ever heard of the sleeping bug? Ziyu said. Sleeping bug. It's a kind of insect, generally hidden in wine. Once someone is exposed to it, they easily fall asleep. This is also why many drunks fall into a deep sleep. Are you saying there's a sleeping bug here? But how could a sleeping bug be so potent? Even the Sathu divine water of the great Yin Yang water divine palace isn't this strong. Tang Wanwan questioned. Sathu divine water is a very potent poison. It is colorless and odorless, and even martial arts masters who are poisoned by it become powerless, at the mercy of others. But even such a poison has limited effects on experts like them, far from knocking them out just by touching it. The claim that a mere sleeping bug could put people to sleep is akin to a fairy tale. Feng Linger and the others also found it impossible. If there really was poison in the world that could easily bring them down like this, the force behind it would have already dominated the martial world. It wouldn't be mysterious enough to leave them guessing. Tang Wanwan couldn't help but recall. At that time, I was in the cellar with my master. I kept feeling as if he was like a wave, coming towards me to bring me to justice on the spot. Feng Linger disdainfully said, What do you mean, imagining being judged on the spot? Can't you stop being so vulgar? At this moment, Shadow Ying, known for being vulgar, surprisingly did not mind this vulgar comment. Instead, with raised eyebrows, she said, You say he was like a wave, rushing at you? What happened then? Tang Wanwan said, It was just a feeling. There wasn't really a wave, and then I was knocked out. Shuning pondered. You're saying Duan Yun created a feeling of rushing towards you, which put you to sleep. That's exactly it. As soon as the words were spoken, everyone looked at Duan Yun, including the Morong brothers. The Morong brothers looked at Duan Yun in shock and said, Is it your doing? Old demon Duan, you did me terrible harm. Saying this, his knife was about to be drawn. Duan Yun pressed down on the hilt of his knife and said, Calm down. It can't be me. Ziyu murmured. You better not say anything. The more you talk, the more it sounds like you. Everyone had this feeling. This matter was quite bizarre and ridiculous, and all the bizarre and ridiculous things at Yuju Manor seemed to be orchestrated by Duan Yun, because no one else could pull it off. Though in the affair of the mutually green Jade City, the Morong brothers seemed to have surpassed Duan Yun in outside matters. Internally, however, in creating trouble, the Morong brothers were not as good as Duan Yun by 11 points. Besides being sycophants and holding high regard for all the women at the manor, the people there generally had strong martial arts and wit, making it difficult for him to spread any mischief. But Duan Yun was different. Whether it was inciting urinary effects or messing with hallucinations, he was impartial, not even sparing pandas and donkeys. Actually, they didn't know that even the earthworms in the soil were not exempted this time. Facing everyone's suspicions, Duan Yun naturally denied them. He had already learned from previous lessons. His illusion technique now couldn't easily deceive them because they had been educated beforehand, developing overly cautious hearts. To hypnotize Shadow Ying and any others who might avoid consulting a doctor, he couldn't allow them to be overly wary. The Morong brothers were the most agitated in questioning. Is it you? Is it you? Duan Yun comforted. Honestly, it's not me. A man should face obstacles squarely. After all, you just fell. The Morong brothers quickly covered Duan Yun's mouth and said, Brother, I was wrong. Duan Yun said, As long as you realize your mistake, you must understand, you can eat anything indiscriminately. but you can't speak recklessly. Who? Who the hell eats? The Morong brothers ultimately didn't dare to finish, stamping their feet and leaving. Whether Duan Yun was behind all this suddenly became uncertain because they had no evidence. Moreover, Duan Yun had also fallen asleep at the time. If not for Feng Linger lacking such capabilities, she would have been the prime suspect. Regarding the outcome of this attempt, Duan Yun was left half pleased and half worried. It was indeed hypnotism, but not the kind he sought. Honestly, the powerful sleep-inducing effect exceeded his expectations. Just imagine if one day he were besieged by hundreds of experts, facing an extremely dire situation. He could use this technique to knock everyone out, ensuring his undefeated status. But the weakness was that it affected both others and himself. To put others to sleep, he had to fall asleep first, as was evident from the recent example. It could only be considered another secret weapon, but how to utilize this secret weapon still required wisdom. Unknowingly, the new year passed. Actually, well before the new year, most people had already gotten busy, doing work as needed, engaging in business as needed without resting. After all, many people had come through hard times, much harder than oxen or horses, and used to idle days of leisure, even if it meant taking a few extra days to rest. The canal construction started only after the new year. Even though many people were eager to begin early, they were all turned down. As Duan Yun put it, "When you work, work well. When you rest, rest fully." Now that the project has finally begun, everyone is even happier than during the new year, rejoicing and exuberant. They are afraid of too much rest. It must be said that martial arts experts working on a project had an effect that exceeded Duan Yun's expectations. At least in terms of efficiency, it far exceeded Duan Yun and their predictions. According to Ziyu's plan, this project was expected to last until the summer of the following year. But looking at it now, it seemed that it would be completed by spring, because this was already the last section of the canal. From a high vantage point, the dugout canal looked like a giant dragon, stretching from Yusher Town to Wangchun City. After reaching Wangchun City, it branched out into several offshoots, and there were designs for water gates along the way. Ziyu even had weeping willows planted along the banks of the canal early on. Once this canal is completed, it will not only prevent floods caused by the large lake outside Yusher Town but also route water to the plains of Wangchun City, allowing more land to be irrigated. Because the canal was dug very wide, coupled with the willows on the banks, Duan Yun could even imagine the scene of weeping willows swaying along the riverbank. Picturesque scenery with painted boats cruising like paintings. Seeing this scene, Duan Yun felt excited and a great sense of accomplishment, and for a moment he thought that the Ziyu, who led all of this, looked much more beautiful. In some way, Duan Yun was face-blind. Ziyu was a beauty, a standard beauty, and combined with green jade, she was a beauty with strong contrast. But initially, when Duan Yun first met her, she was a negative in his eyes. If the Morong brothers hadn't stopped him, he might have forcibly stuffed pancakes in her face, because she had written a book that made Duan Yun furious. Speaking of the ending of The Fall of the Goddess Constable, even now, Duan Yun would jump up with rage. As he said, it was an ending that was more infuriating than eunuchs, and several times he dreamed of beating Ziyu, all because the first half of the book was stunning, but the second half was like feeding dung. Duan Yun once questioned her about why she fed dung in the latter part, and her response was, it was only such an ending that would be memorable, and even when one takes a dump, they would remember it. Of course, Duan Yun would remember. It was an ending that made him so angry he would clench and cut off his bowel movements while on the toilet. So at first, the beauty Ziyu was a negative in Duan Yun's eyes. Later on, she also followed Duan Yun and the others in doing many acts of chivalry, becoming a heroine, a good partner in the path of demon extermination, and only then, in Duan Yun's eyes, did she go from a negative to normal. But Duan Yun was face-blind and didn't find her stunning. Or rather, up to now, the only ones who could amaze Duan Yun at first sight were Shan Ying climbing out of her coffin and the second palace master Ming Xing, whom he shared a fierce battle with upon their first encounter. But at this moment, looking at the canal taking shape, seeing how it could change the landscape and be so picturesque, Duan Yun suddenly thought that Ziyu beside him was very beautiful, the stunning kind of beautiful. A beautiful Ziyu creating such a beautiful river naturally made her even more beautiful. Ziyu leaned on the stone rail of the newly built stone bridge, puzzled. Why are you staring at me? Duanyun candidly replied, Can't I look at your beauty? Ziyu smiled slightly and said, Is this the first time you complimented me? Duanyun asked in surprise. The first time? Ziyu raised an eyebrow and said, What else? Indeed, in her memory, this was the first time Duanyun complimented her, and it was on something women cared about, beauty. She couldn't help teasing, You won't fall head over heels in love with me because of this. And if unrequited, go destroy the martial world? Will you? Duanyun retorted, Are you that silly from writing books? Ha ha ha. With that, both laughed joyously. The setting sun cast its golden glow on them, creating a beautiful golden blur. Little Ian, helping dig the canal below, couldn't help but comment, Don't they look quite a match? Beside her, Lei Ying, also helping out, said with jealousy, A match my ass. They look like two dogs. Little Ian followed up, I think we're the ones like two dogs. As the servants of Yuju Manor, they usually serve Duanyun without complaints. And in times like this, they have to help with the hard labor, often feeling as tired as dogs. Especially Lei Ying, who used to be pampered and well cared for by the Gu family. Now she seemed like she was reduced to being an ox or horse. The disparity filled with immense humiliation was hard for her to bear at first. But later, she somehow began to enjoy it. The harder and more tormenting Duanyun was to her, this top-ranking woman. The less he treated her like a woman, the more excited and thrilled she felt. Sometimes she couldn't help but hum lightly. At this time, on the bridge, Duanyun asked, Ziyu, how long do you think it will take to complete this canal? Ziyu said, At most a month. Duanyun said in surprise, So fast? Ziyu replied, Just look at how many people there are now, and what skills these people have. This is the first major project in heroic land, the first great undertaking initiated by Duanyun, and it naturally required thought and manpower. And Ziyu was sure that only in such extremely special circumstances could this canal take shape at such an astonishing speed. Or, without Duanyun, it would be utterly impossible to be so quick. She was sure that even the Mo sect, known for their construction skills, couldn't accomplish such a task at such speed. Besides her extraordinary wisdom laying the foundation for this canal, it was due to the luxurious nature of the workforce. Just look at Little Ian and Lei Ying, whose skills are rare. Where, in the martial world, could you find a second group? Do you know any women, with the demeanor of a grandmaster and the first renowned person in Tianzhou, doing hard labor digging a canal? In other places, they would be worshipped as if they were immortals. Moreover, the canal is filled with Mo sect elders skilled in construction, various body cultivation experts who don't tire from digging, and water-clamping women who break water and stone. All kinds of experts. To be honest, gathering such a diverse group of masters to work on the same task was still somewhat surreal to Ziyu. In short, because this canal was about to be completed, not only Duanyun and Ziyu on the bridge, most people here were very happy. The most crucial part of the project had ended. Though still busy, the atmosphere here was relaxed. Laughter and conversations, light and joyful, frequently emanated from the canal. Since the wages here were high, many workers were already discussing where to buy a house, purchase fields, or perhaps go to a brothel to marry a good woman after their work was done. What, you want to marry Miss Qin? Old Li, that's not appropriate. You're exploiting public property for private use. The brothel in Wangchun City is already weakened, and you're adding fuel to the fire. It's true love. Bah! What purity are you pretending? Aren't you just after Miss Qin's expertise in red rope inverted suspension? It's true love. Bullshit. For a moment, the place was filled with a cheerful ambience. Meanwhile, on a mountain peak outside this section of the canal, Rat Phase Wei Wuqing and Chicken Phase Ji Siken each held a metal tube with a mirror-like front end, looking toward this place. This is a 1,000-mile mirror, also known as a far-sighted glasses, a tool often used by seafarers. Though it can't see 1,000 miles away, it can see very far. Wei Wuqing, while observing, lamented, It seems they really like that canal. Ji Siken also sighed. It was not easy to dig the canal this way indeed. Wei Wuching said, "Then let's have some fun with them." Ji Siken, nervous, said, "Boss, what fun?" Old Demon Duan is not to be underestimated. The more they like it, the more fun it is. Likewise, the stronger this old Demon Duan, the more fun it is. If it's no fun, I wouldn't bother to come. Wei Wuching, smiling as if bathed in spring wind, began to walk downhill. Yes, he was going to have some fun. Overcast sky, approaching noon. This is usually when the laborers are most exhausted and eager to relax. Because soon it will be time to eat, and after a whole morning's work, both physically and mentally, they wish for a break. But the people digging this river are an exception. At this time, they are working with great enthusiasm and vigor. Oh, less than half an hour to go before rest, we must hurry up. Damn it, why do we have to eat and rest again? Can't we cut out the meals and breaks here? No way, I haven't worked enough. Seriously, haven't had enough. Can young hero and heroine stop treating us like humans? Yeah, this life is easier than being cattle. What kind of lousy day is this? Taking so much money, it makes one feel guilty. Their enthusiasm for work is beyond imagination. Not only because of good pay and proximity to home, but also because they regard Duan Yun as one of their own and fear for his loss. In other places, if you say a sect elder or sect leader treats a worker as one of their own, people would surely think you're a fool, but here, in the heroic land managed by the Jade Pearl heroes, even ordinary people have this feeling, let alone these Jianghu people. Yes, even though in the heroic land they can't commit adultery or murder, they still regard themselves as a level above civilians, thus feeling even more like one of Duan Yun's own. A group of people worked vigorously. Indeed, whoever lets you rest more, you'll get angry with them, which is one reason this river was completed earlier than expected. Just as the group was working frenetically, Old Lung from the Iron Claw sect was digging, but suddenly stopped. Old Lung, why are you standing there dazed? Don't block the way. My fingernail cracked. If your fingernail cracked, then rest. No, my granny said. My family's inherited nails are like divine turtle shells. Once they crack, something bad might happen. Get out of here, are you a digger or a fortune teller? Suddenly, Old Lung looked towards one end of the river channel and said, Listen, what's that sound? What sound? Wait. At this moment, everyone heard the sound. A loud rumbling, approaching quickly from afar. The next moment, everyone's face changed. Quick, run. When the run word was out of his mouth, the whole person was already swept away. Water. The tumultuous water rushed forward rapidly. This river wasn't completed, naturally not the time for water release. So this sudden stream caught everyone off guard. Even these people who are trained martial artists were left screaming miserably. Some aren't good swimmers and have started to struggle. Duan Yun did not witness the violent impact of the river current, as he was still in small Springtown shopping. This seemed quite ordinary to Duan Yun. But just then, Tang Wanwan suddenly protected him with tension in her face, saying, Someone's here. Duan Yun, puzzled, said, There are people everywhere here. Tang Wanwan looked around, her expression solemn. Someone is harmful to you. Tang Wanwan, Yu State's top-rated, heavenly sensitive saint body, is highly attuned to threats she cares about. Duan Yun initially didn't care since many wanted him dead. Even in this heroic land, there was no lack of heroic villains waiting for an opportunity, but those small fries were like dust to him now, not worth mentioning. But in the next moment, Duan Yun's expression also became serious. For Tang Wanwan's perception is quite sharp and accurate. If it wasn't a real threat, she wouldn't mind. Now with her intense protective stance, Duan Yu could even see goosebumps on her fair neck. That could only mean the incoming person might be threatening to him. There's a master here. Duan Yun's eyes scanned around like lightning, without detecting any anomalies for now. Because this small spring town was already crowded, and due to its proximity to their Yuzhu Manor, its popularity had surged. The presence of Jade Pearl heroes in Yuzhu Manor caused a slight shift in Wangchun City's core status, which was enough to turn small spring town into small spring city. The expanded small spring town, now twice articulated, could aptly be called a city. After some time, the goosebumps on Tang Wanwan's neck disappeared, cautiously saying, "Left." Before long, someone ran over, gasping for breath. "Young hero Duan. Something has happened." When Duan Yun arrived at the river section, the water had just destroyed a nearby unfinished sluice gate, leaving devastation. The workers in the river, skilled swimmers, were heroically saving people. Some were injured, and some were still unaccounted for. Without a word, Duan Yun dove into the water, his room pupil technique activated, instantly turning the murky water clear. As Duan Yun swam through, one by one, people in the water were thrown out. As these people landed ashore, they felt light as feathers, thanks to the incorporated soft strength. "Count the people," Duan Yun said after surfacing. Like the last time when Oldine Forest caught fire, this time the rushing water similarly caught everyone by surprise, with equally astounding destructive power. However, as reinforcements from all directions joined, this chaotic situation quickly improved. Especially with Duan Yun's presence, able to save and heal, even those severely injured were soon treated. As long as he's here, even if barely alive, there's nothing to worry about. It can only be said that martial arts and medical skills complement each other. The higher Duan Yun's level reaches, the more his medical skills rise accordingly. Because the supreme state of martial arts is complete control over one's body, down to commanding every cell, which enables you to dominate the martial world. Similarly, medical skills also require absolute control over the body, not only for oneself but also for others. As the doctors from the Hero Medical Workshop arrived, Duan Yun swiftly headed towards Yushir town. The river construction wasn't completed, nor was it time to release water. Where did such a large amount of water come from? Duan Yun's first instinct was that someone was sabotaging, especially recalling the danger Tang Wanwan sensed earlier, further validating his judgment. He tread upstream against the current, quickly reaching the source of the water flow. This section of the river near the lake hadn't been built yet, as it's typically completed before water release. But now there appeared to be countless large holes, with lake water surging through them from all directions. The water output from these large holes far exceeded the anticipated river water volume. Flooding unchecked could lead to a breach. The Murong brothers and their group were already rescuing the situation. The Murong brothers used sword chi to cut the water flow from one hole, while Fenglinger and Laying frantically used true chi to push earth and stones to block the openings. One of the holes was barely considered blocked, but there were at least 5 such openings, none able to be managed simultaneously. Duan Yun arrived, unleashing cloud-clearing palm with both hands, moving mountains and overturning seas. The rushing water reversed its flow. The next moment, he flew to a height and shaved off a mountaintop, moving it over to block the water. The graveyard was some distance away. Even with Duan Yun's rapid true chi operation, it consumed quite some time. The Jade Pearl heroes brought Jianghu people and worked into the afternoon to truly block the surging lake water. Duan Yun washed his hands in the lake water and said to Ziyu, "Ziyu, what do you think?" Ziyu, looking grave, said, "These holes are unusual, very unusual. Someone intentionally created them, and that's what's most terrifying. Creating several large holes like these isn't a minor engineering task for us. We often dig rivers on this side. I inspected it the day before yesterday and found nothing amiss, which means the perpetrator was secretive yet swift, completing it in a very short time. In less than 2 days, maybe even shorter. I passed by here yesterday without spotting a single sign, making it likely done overnight. No, that's not right. Creating such holes overnight is utterly outrageous." Duan Yun, his expression also grave, considered himself experienced in creating holes and, along with his abundant true chi, couldn't accomplish such speed. At least not at the speed needed for creating these holes. Ziyu continued analyzing. If this was indeed someone doing it, then not only is he adept at making holes but also skilled at water control, understanding the impact these holes would have on the river. By this time, the Murong brothers and their party had come over. Fenglinger wondered, who could achieve this level? The Murong brothers pondered, Nearby sects skilled in hole digging have registered with us, so there's no chance of secretly mobilizing such manpower for this task. Recalling Tang Wanwan's earlier suspicion, Duan Yun inwardly acknowledged Ziyu's analysis, saying, "What if just a few people managed this overnight?" The Murong brothers said, "How could that be? Even bringing Yun State's top 10 sect leaders skilled in hole digging here couldn't achieve it. Remember, this section of the river hasn't been started, and it's several miles from the lake. Yet these holes are so large and round. While blocking the water, they noticed the holes were impressively big and round, even possessing a peculiar aesthetic." Laying frowned. "Don't you feel these holes resemble tomb-robbing pits?" "Tomb-robbing pits?" Shuning murmured. "Don't mention it, but they indeed have that feeling. Tomb robbers are meticulous with their hole-making, and competition for better holes exists among them. Once, Banshan, Shelling, Fakeyu, and Gold Moving, for major tomb raiding sects, frequently held contests to outdo each other in making round and sturdy holes. The winner claimed the top ranking." Duan Yun scoffed. "They actually compete in this?" Shuning nodded. "Yet making such large and round holes is indeed rare." True, they didn't have time to examine the water holes while busy stopping the water. Now, these holes appeared not only large and round but also had smooth walls, reminiscent of a mirror-like surface. The mere thought was preposterous. Laying said, "But the 4 great tomb raiding sects have long declined. Even their remnants are ineffective for such tasks. The martial world is rife with countless graves, like Yin Yang Tomb, Butterfly Tomb, White Bun Tomb, but Ghost Eye Tomb, each varied and perilous. Even the once prosperous 4 tomb raiding sects couldn't withstand grave hazards. Over time, talent naturally dwindled. Knowing how formidable graves could be, why were they still reckless? Only those truly initiated realize that tomb raiding is akin to indulgences like gambling, drinking, and smoking. They're addictive. Imagine being a tomb robber. Who wouldn't want to uncover a prime tomb someday? Either possessing Gold Mountain and Silver Mountain or acquiring divine skills secret manuals for instant success. It's like gambling, with thrills and suspense. One big bet might take you to the top. This excitement drove tomb robbers despite the dangers, leading to casualties and dwindling legacies. The group pondered but couldn't fathom who in the martial world had such skills. At this point, Feng Linger suddenly said, "Are we overlooking someone?" "Who?" asked Ziyu. "Over 10 years ago, when I was very young, my mother said someone might establish a sect through tomb raiding. She talked about a genius who mastered Banshan, Shelling, Gold Moving, and Fakeyu skills, and merged them, elevating their essence." The Murong brothers reacted, saying, "I know who you're talking about, but hasn't he disappeared?" Feng Linger thought aloud. He disappeared long ago. Tomb robbers usually disappear while raiding tombs, but what if he's not dead? The Murong brothers said, "Now that you mention it, his brother indeed has a grudge against us." As a martial world newcomer, Duan Yun was unfamiliar with the reference and asked directly, "Who?" "Rat Phase Wei Wuxing, you first killed his lover, Peacock Demon, then wiped out his brother Zhu Xiang's family. This man revenges viciously. If alive and returns, he might indeed come for you." The Murong brothers analyzed. Duan Yun showed no sign of anger, calmly saying, "Coming for me, huh?" His calm demeanor actually made others fear him more. Because everyone knew Duan Yun bore grudges deeply, even the Heavenly King offending him meant annihilation of their family. The calmer he acted, the angrier he'd become. Like dogs, those that bite usually don't bark. At that moment, Duan Yun grabbed Little Yin. Little Yin feared being refined but heard Duan Yun's voice. "Use your nose to sniff out any trace or clue, so I can visit that person's family." Little Yin nervously replied, "I'll try my best." Seeing her lack of confidence, Duan Yun said, "If only the sisters were here. With the help of the goddess catcher sisters, he'd likely find the entire family." Then Feng Linger reluctantly said, "I've heard Cold Yi Meng and Cold Yi Shui are indeed in Yun State for a case, not far from here." Duan Yun's eyes lit up instantly. "Hurry! Let them come!" His eagerness made it seem he was readying for marriage. Indeed, under the terrifying pressure from the Jade Pearl heroes, malicious intent remained suppressed. Or rather, even if harboring evil thoughts, they had to be good people. This stemmed from abundant energy among those refining bodies, also because in the martial world they saw Duan Yun's project. The impact of this canal accident is indeed significant. The ones most affected are the laborers. These laborers, who were usually full of energy and disliked the short working hours, have now stopped working altogether, yet their wages are still being paid. Is this really how things should be? Some people have protested against this. Duan Yun, who was already annoyed, complained, "If you think you have too much free time, go and do some vigilante justice." The Morong brothers commented, "But apart from this major issue, there aren't many people causing trouble here anymore." Duan Yun said, "Then have them help elderly folks cross the street. Or they can keep the public restrooms clean." To solve Wangchun City's sanitation problem, Duan Yun had once built more than 50 public restrooms, aiming to prevent people from causing a mess. But although the public restrooms were built, they had a problem. They often got clogged. The Mo sect elder was tasked with solving this, but they couldn't come up with a good solution. Perhaps their ambition didn't lie in maintaining restrooms, and they tended to slack off and procrastinate, unwilling to innovate. In the end, they only sent people to unclog them when necessary. Duan Yun's suggestion to have them help elders and unclog restrooms was initially made in anger, but this group of people took it seriously. Soon, in Wangchun City, elderly ladies and gentlemen crossing the street were practically carried on people's shoulders, and the restrooms in Wangchun City were exceptionally well maintained. Not only were the public restrooms well maintained, but the private ones were as well. Because such a group of exceptionally energetic martial artists came to Wangchun City to maintain restrooms, the public restrooms weren't clogged enough to keep them busy, so these laborers often voluntarily serviced private restrooms, almost without charging a fee. When asked why they didn't charge, the answer was that they had received Duan Yun's blessing, and young hero Duan had already paid them. Duan Yun had no time to concern himself with these positive changes, because he had pressing matters on his mind. He hadn't yet dealt with the culprit behind the sabotage of the heroic land project. How could he eat or sleep well? And this evil demon was adept at hiding and tunneling, quite cunning. Suffice it to say, at the moment he needed the comfort, no, the help of the goddess catcher sisters. With little Een out of commission, they should have a way to find some clues. To quickly bring the sisters here, Duan Yun dispatched Lei Ying and little Een to fetch them, as both had become quite fast runners under his training, rare quick feet. Lei Ying immediately complained, "Even as the renowned Mrs. Mingqi of Tianzhou, I tolerated you riding me, but now some unknown woman also dares to ride me?" Duan Yun replied, "Then find this person. If you can find her, I'll let you ride me." In order to exterminate demons and annihilate the family of the evil demon that angered him, Duan Yun was willing to endure the humiliation of being forcefully ridden by this captive woman. Compared to the loss of a bit of dignity and avenging an entire family, no, compared to the mission of demon extermination, it was rather insignificant. Seeing Duan Yun's serious demeanor, Lei Ying didn't dare to complain anymore. She grabbed little Een and said, "Let's hit the road quickly." It wasn't that she didn't want to ride old demon Duan, but she could see Duan Yun's seriousness. In other words, she could see Duan Yun's determination. It was clear that if Duan Yun didn't utterly destroy that culprit, he would truly lose his temper. At that time, forget about riding Duan Yun. Who knows what Duan Yun might do to her? After all, even when Duan Yun wasn't angry, he had her feeling on the brink of life and death, between ecstasy and agony. If he really got mad, she dared not even think about it. Little Een also saw this point and quickly packed her luggage to set off. Rainy day, Rain Mountain City. It wasn't even early spring yet, but the rainy days in Rain Mountain City already had the taste of spring rain. The endless drizzle, as fine as sorrow. Sister Lung Yiming gazed at the drizzle outside the window, sighing with emotion. Having just finished the case here, this was supposed to be her rare chance to relax, but Lung Yiming didn't like this feeling of idleness. Because when working on a case, her mind was always preoccupied with the investigation, leaving no room for distractions. But once she relaxed, she couldn't help but let her thoughts wander. For example, this Rain Mountain city wasn't far from the legendary heroic land. If that so-called heroic land expanded a bit further, she might just be standing on it. She had come to his territory. Would he be eager to see her? After all, she felt he was interested in her. Otherwise, on the night they first met, why would he want to know her name, even if she didn't tell him? The frequent encounters afterward, were they fate or his doing? Humph. Men always create these chance encounters to get closer to someone they like. Hey, Lang Yiming. Only then did Lang Yiming snap out of her daydream, turning to look at her sister Lang Ishue. Lang Ishue teased. What are you daydreaming about? It's not even spring yet. Lang Yiming pouted and replied, You don't understand. It's not daydreaming. It's called having ideals. Lang Ishue, with a look of disdain, said, I can't be bothered with you. Saying this, she also looked out at the scenery. The two sisters looked nearly identical and happened to rest their ample bosoms on the table to relieve the weight, creating a rather lovely view. But at that moment, the sound of a sudden commotion reached their ears. The sisters' eyes focused, and they looked in the direction of the noise. This was a sub-bureau of the Qingqi Bureau, a place even more dignified than a government office, where loud commotion was rare, so it was usually very quiet. It was precisely because it was quiet that the noisy footsteps stood out as unusual, because the pace was too fast. The next moment, the owner of those footsteps had already entered the sisters' line of sight. There were two women, one with twin ponytails looking fresh and beautiful, and another with a voluptuous figure that didn't lose to them and carried an alluring charm. Such women, placed anywhere, would be top beauties. Even the most beautiful concubines in the emperor's harem might pale in comparison. These women are usually elegant, like a peacock, always blooming with their unique beauty. But at this moment, these two women were anything but elegant, even appearing a bit comical, because their legs had turned into multiple phantoms, rushing forward like a wind and fire wheel. Experts. The two sisters' expressions turned serious immediately. Yes, though the running action wasn't elegant, the speed and frequency were astonishing. Definitely extraordinarily skilled individuals. And they were heading towards the Qingqi Bureau. What? Alas! A few Qingqi Bureau constables in purple robes tried to stop them, only to be swept off their feet by a gust of wind. Then, the woman filled with charm shouted, Where are Lang Yiming and Lang Ishue? Because she was running too fast, her curves were still swaying. They're coming for us. The sisters Lang Yiming and Lang Ishue, in telepathy, simultaneously retreated. Because they knew, with just the strength of these two women before them, the sisters wouldn't be a match. Speak, or don't blame me for being ruthless. Lei Ying looked at one of the purple-robed constables and said domineeringly. Though she was a servant at Yuzhu Manor, with a status only slightly higher than a donkey, outside she was the stunning Fire Phoenix. The purple-robed constable was professional. Naturally, in such situations, he wouldn't speak, because the two individuals came straight for the Qingqi Bureau's core and mentioned their superior's name right off the bat, clearly targeting their superiors. However, this purple robe, though professional, wasn't perfectly professional. He was probably worried about Lang Yiming and Lang Ishue, and unconsciously glanced at where they were on the second floor. With that glance, little Yin's legs transformed into a gust of wind, rushing up the stairs. The next moment, little Yin's voice came from above. The sisters with large chests. The younger has a mole on her bosom. It's them. Before setting out, Duan Yun had briefly described the goddess catcher sisters, and little Yin recognized them immediately. Lang Yiming and Lang Ishue drew their swords at the same time, questioning, What do you intend to do? Little Yin said, Of course, it's to take you away. Someone wants to see you. For no reason, we won't go, Lang Ishue replied. At this moment, Lei Ying also arrived, saying, Hurry up, hit the road. If that guy doesn't see you tonight, he might blow up. Saying so, she and little Yin simultaneously carried chairs on their backs, indicating for the two sisters to sit. Lang Yiming exclaimed, Such devilry, you want to take us this way. Sitting on these two beauties to meet someone was truly baffling. Little Een, panting, retorted, Lang Yimeng, don't you remember me? It's me, always with Duan Yun, the one with twin ponytails. Lang Yimeng suddenly realized and said, is it Duan Yun who wants to see us? Nonsense. Who else but him could make us rush like this? As soon as she heard it was Duan Yun wanting to see her, Lang Yimeng immediately jumped onto Little Yin's back without hesitation. Lang Yishue froze for a moment, then also got on Lei Ying's back. Then, two beauties carried two beauties and dashed out. The government officers within Qingqi Bureau were dumbfounded. They had seen plenty of situations, even large-scale jailbreaks. But this scene of beauties carrying beauties away was unheard of. The purple-robed constables still struggled to block them, but Lang Yishue had already ordered, their friends, no need to pursue. Yes. Thus, everyone watched as the four sped away, their speed astonishing. Sitting on the backs of Little Een and Lei Ying, Lang Yimeng and Lang Yishue were both anxious and excited. They had ventured far and wide, ridden horses, donkeys, and elephants, and twice entered the desert riding ostriches. But they had never ridden on humans, especially such beautiful and mighty experts. As the most promising goddess catchers of the Qingqi Bureau, Lang Yimeng and Lang Yishue treated ordinary people with the most humanity. But in their inherent view, the masters of the martial world, especially those above them in skill, were still a higher-level presence. They never thought they could have such people carry them on their backs. Yet now it was happening. The two realized that these two women had always been carried by Duan Yun before. Lang Yimeng quickly realized it first, thinking that the person carrying her sister was probably Tianzhou's most famous weapon, the former young master's wife of the Gu family, Lei Ying. Although they hadn't seen Duan Yun for quite some time, they'd been hearing news about him constantly. There are some people in the martial world whose news is unavoidable, and Duan Yun was undoubtedly one of them. At this moment, Sister Lang Yishue couldn't help but ask, did Duan Yun encounter something looking for us? Lang Yimeng suddenly thought and said, is he going to marry me? As soon as she said this, Little Een, who was running smoothly, suddenly slipped and slid far forward. Damn! That's such a downer. Little Een got up and continued running, grumbling as she went. Because Little Een and Lei Ying were running very fast, and since they weren't carrying Duan Yun, there was no need for shock absorption. Lang Yimeng and Lang Yishue were getting a bit dizzy from the jolts. Their chests felt like they were constantly bouncing without pause. And the key was that Lang Yimeng and Lang Yishue had a special connection. They experienced the same sensations if they were close together. This meant double the jolting. So Lang Yishue took the initiative to press down on her chest. With Lei Ying having deeper power than Little Een, while running, she explained the situation to Lang Yimeng and Lang Yishue. After listening, Lang Yimeng muttered, so, it's not to forcefully marry me? Lang Yishue, much calmer, said, at this time, anyone daring to provoke him is really rare. Lei Ying leaped over a broken wall and said, we suspect it might be the rat phase of the 12 star signs. Upon hearing this name, Lang Yimeng's expression turned decidedly solemn as she said, didn't this person disappear? Disappearing doesn't mean dead. Little Een interjected. Lang Yimeng and Lang Yishue glanced at each other, their expressions growing significantly more serious. The rat phase Wei Wuxing had disappeared for many years, no longer a hot topic in the martial world, with few mentioning him. Some newcomers in the martial world hadn't even heard of him. But as goddess catchers of the Qingqi Bureau, the sisters deeply understood the terror of this demon. In fact, they could say this person was their childhood nightmare. When the rat phase was rampant, they were still young but already training in the Divine Capture Pavilion of the Qingqi Bureau. And at that time, it was precisely when the rat phase Wei Wuxing targeted the goddess catchers. The rat phase Wei Wuxing was lustful, with many women harmed by him in the martial world. The martial world claimed Zhu Xiang Zhu Haimian was lustful, daring to forcibly marry the Huangshan heroine, but compared to his elder brother the rat phase Wei Wuxing, he was nothing. The rat phase Wei Wuxing had once snuck into the palace and slept with the emperor's 5 favorite concubines, leaving his exclusive mark on them. The emperor still loved the concubines, but every time he was with them, he had to face those marks, which even caused him heartache. But Wei Wuxing's lustfulness and audacity didn't stop there. Eventually, he didn't even mind about gender. Peacock being his lover is the best example. Back then, Wei Wuxing seemed to have his eyes set on the goddess catchers. And he had his eyes set on the divine catcher. That is, the peak of the goddess catchers. Though Lang Yiming and Lang Yixue had endless potential and were repeatedly solving cases, they were still 2 levels below. During that time, Wei Wuxing caused a vacancy in the Qingqi Bureau's divine catcher position. The first divine catcher was a woman, abducted. The second was a 60-year-old man appointed in crisis, also taken away. The third was a bearded man, still abducted. At that time, the Qingqi Bureau was in turmoil, even hesitant to select a new divine catcher. The young Lang Yiming and Lang Yixue were also very scared hearing these stories. If not for the rat phase's later disappearance, who knows what the state of the divine catcher position would be? Perhaps appointing one meant losing one to abduction and disgrace. Who would have imagined that such a demon would return? Lang Yiming and Lang Yixue both felt a chill. Following the chill, a warm courage arose. The chill brought by the rat phase, the warmth, naturally from Duanyun. But this warm courage couldn't fully dispel the chill. Because the rat phase was inherently fearsomely powerful, and having not been seen in so many years, appearing now and daring to provoke Duanyun, could it mean he's even more formidable than before, and confident in dealing with Duanyun? Overcast skies, thick clouds, yet no rain. But at this moment, a secluded bamboo grove was filled with the sound of pitter-pattering rain. 2 men were overlapping, their figures both in a blurred state. If you looked closely, you would discover that the 2 were in a state of high-speed trembling. The trembling was so intense that it caused the entire bamboo grove to shake, and the falling dew was comparable to rain. Ji Siken, the chicken, was at the forefront, constantly making hum sounds. At this time, Ji Sichen's entire skin was red and burning hot. While humming, he said, "Boss, I can't do it anymore. It's too much, it's going to overflow." Behind him, Wei Wuxing, the rat, trembled even more violently, with a wicked smile. "Little Ji, if you can't even withstand this level of power, how are you going to have fun with me and old demon Duan?" "Ma!" Wei Wuxing didn't care at all about what the chicken said, continuing to increase the intensity. Ji Siken closed his eyes, silently enduring it all. Because he knew the boss's temperament, it would not show him any mercy. Besides, being taught by such a top-notch expert was a dream unattainable by people of the martial world. He was lucky to have a good big brother, which gave him such a heaven-defying opportunity. "Big brother, keep injecting me. Make me stronger." In less than half a day, Little Een and Laying brought Lang Yiming and Lang Yixue back. To put it another way, these 2 can indeed be considered top-notch steeds, ultra-luxury configurations that others could only imitate clumsily. After all, even those top experts standing on the clouds would not drive Jade Guanin's eldest daughter and Tianzhou's first Mrs. Mingqi like this. In their eyes, it was too wasteful, too perverse. Moreover, among these top experts, there is no shortage of cowards. Some wouldn't just be driven. They'd probably willingly be driven by such women. Recent examples include the young master of the Gu family who died for love, and further back, the demon Wang Yihua who massacred a city for love. Back then, Wang Yihua's city massacre was so chaotic that when he massacred the 4th city, he learned that his beloved had eloped with a coachman. Distraught, he was killed. It was said that Wang Yihua's city massacre was instigated by the woman he loved, who said the people's gazes were filthy. To please his beloved, Wang Yihua unhesitatingly massacred a city, behaving more obediently than a dog. In the end, even the devoted dog died because of his feelings. The martial world never lacks cowards and fools, especially some experts who suddenly rise due to fortuitous encounters, are most likely to become cowards. This is because, before they encounter fortuitous events and rise, these experts were ordinary people. Even after achieving divine skill and unprecedented martial power and status, they cannot hide their true nature. Meeting a woman could still devour them completely. Remaining devoted and struggling to please, with many even forgiving their women for infidelity. The most ridiculous was the previous sect leader of the Kongtong sect, who willingly transferred his power during marriage, only to have the woman take half his power and leave him, blaming himself afterward for not being good enough, leading her to leave him. In conclusion, someone like Duan Yun who squanders his power so wastefully is indeed charmingly unique. The bloodthirsty storyteller has recently been picking this topic to stir up the fury of cowardly experts and turtle women, aiming to rally them against old demon Duan. And indeed, some were convinced. There are those who naturally only listen to women, preferring death over disobedience. Leng Yiming and Leng Yishue were jostled all the way, so much that they were dizzy. But upon seeing Duan Yun at Yuzhu Manor, the two sisters immediately perked up, especially the younger sister, Leng Yiming, who often thought of Duan Yun, and as she thought, Duan Yun came to her. Does this mean that even across a great distance, they still have a telepathic connection, always in sync? Upon seeing the two sisters, Duan Yun also felt invigorated. After holding back his anger for so long, he finally had a chance to vent it. Without a word, he grabbed one in each hand, intending to take them to the crime scene. Seeing this, the Murong brothers spoke up. "Old demon Duan, how can you treat the divine catcher sisters so roughly?" Upon hearing what the Murong brothers said, Duan Yun paused for a moment. Yes, these goddess catcher sisters were not like the Yuzhu female knight. They were guests he invited, and acting like this was not too polite. But at that moment, the older sister Lang Yishue said first, "We're all acquaintances. No need to mind." She then voluntarily leaned into Duan Yun's arm. The younger sister followed suit, giving the Murong brothers a disdainful look, clearly indicating, "Mind your own business." Watching the sisters almost carried away by Duan Yun, the Murong brothers were deeply saddened. Why couldn't the charming and respectful themselves win the favor of the beautiful girls, while it was the rough Duan Yun who was more popular? Can't just be because he is slightly more handsome than me, right? The Murong brothers secretly complained to themselves. The site of the river dug with a gap was not far from Yuzhu Manor, and in the blink of an eye, Duan Yun brought Lang Yiming and Lang Yishue there. Looking at the river that stretched far into the distance, Lang Yiming and Lang Yishue displayed expressions of amazement. "Is this river dug out?" Duan Yun nodded and said, "This is the fruit of half a year of our labor. If done right, it could benefit many." With this, the sisters' expressions turned complex, even somewhat bewildered. They had seen big engineering projects before. The court always had many of them, often building imperial tombs or imperial gardens. But projects like Duan Yun's, where he excavated an entire river, were rarely heard of. The key was his intention. If Duan Yun was doing this to enjoy boat rides or some other luxury, asking people to dig a river would seem normal. But since he claimed it was to benefit many people, it appeared rather crazy. However, the two sisters quickly realized that in the eyes of most people, Duan Yun was already insane, because he had done even crazier things before, like not imposing taxes on agriculture on heroic land. This caused a huge uproar, with many sects and aristocratic families harboring grudges, especially with more people fleeing to Wangchun City. The Qingqi Bureau, received many voices urging the court to send troops to annihilate Duan Yun and his heroic land. According to them, old demon Duan was undermining the foundation of the world's righteous path. If he continued with his antics, chaos would ensue. Indeed, the neighboring sects and aristocratic families were the first to struggle since their supply of obedient workers dwindled due to the exodus. Living conditions became dire for many sects and aristocratic families. For instance, Miss Hong Zhong from the Hong medicine sect in Yun State once angrily complained that many fields were left uncultivated due to the dwindling number of enslaved commoners. She had to cut her consumption of top-quality birds' nest soup and tremella from 20 bowls to 10. She asked the managing farmers what the Red Medicine sect was doing wrong, making them abandon fertile land. A bold farmer mentioned that the taxes were high and suggested reducing them. He was hanged on a scarecrow later that day. At this point, Lang Yiming and Lang Yishue had calmed down completely. If someone else claimed to excavate a river for the good of common people, their instinct as goddesses catcher would suspect a conspiracy, because no sane person would spend shiny silver on something like this. But if it were Duan Yun, everything made sense. The Bodhi Temple's reputation for charity was spreading across many states, and it remained an oddity in the martial world. Upon hearing of Duan Yun's benevolent deeds, they thought Duan Yun was too radical for a while. Can only be said that Duan Yun could never be judged by common logic at any time. Some called him a hero while others a demon. In the eyes of Lang Yiming and Lang Yishue, he was much simpler. He was merely an admirer intrigued by them, yet never confessed his feelings. Watching Duan Yun gazing at the altered river, the two sisters understood his emotions instantly. Their expressions turned serious, abandoning any romantic notions, and began investigating. Upon commencing their investigation, their demeanor changed entirely. At least in Duan Yun's eyes, the goddess catcher's uniform they wore became much more striking. Similar to top-tier swordsmen who might seem ordinary, once their blades are drawn, they become completely different people. Lang Yishue and Lang Yiming quickly dug a hole through the filled earth down to the depths. The two sisters quickly arrived at the outline of the previously dug hole and sniffed carefully. Seeing the smoothness and neatness of the hole, their hearts grew heavier. Along the way, they had heard speculations about the rat phase and now, seeing the dugout wall, were even more certain of this person's extraordinary skills. Indeed, even Duan Yun admitted his tunneling skills were inferior to this person's, indicating the opponent's natural adeptness in this aspect was terrifying. Honestly, the hole was too large and filled with new soil, and even with the skills of Lang Yiming and Lang Yishue, it would take a considerable amount of time. Yet they found clues rather quickly. Because the soil dug out of the hole had a distinct earthy smell, very different from the freshly filled soil. But considering much of the new soil came from nearby clay and stones, such a big difference shouldn't exist. Lang Yishue speculated that this smell might be left by the rat phase. To create so many large holes in such a short time, the rat phase must have used a unique technique that altered the soil's scent, thus resulting in the distinctive odor. The two sisters quickly determined the direction. If we dig down from here, we can follow the scent, Lang Yishue said. Duan Yun nodded. Very well. You point the direction, and I'll dig the hole. At this moment, Shen Ying, Feng Linger, and the Murong brothers arrived too. Upon hearing Duan Yun's plan to tunnel and hunt down the culprit, they were eager to join. Seeing this, Duan Yun said, Be cautious of being led away. Let one person come with me, and the rest stay and guard. Signal us with large fireworks if anything happens. Previously, during unrest around Wangchun City, the Jade Pearl heroes developed a set of rules. That is, to set off fireworks in case of issues to facilitate more efficient mutual support. I'll go. I'll go. I'll go. Shen Ying, Feng Linger, and the Murong brothers spoke in unison. This time, Feng Linger stepped forward first, saying, I've always been on guard in the past, but this time it has to be me. Seeing how strongly Feng Linger felt about demon slaying, Duan Yun didn't hesitate and said, Red face heroine? It's you. Yay! Feng Linger said joyfully. Feng Linger had missed being on the front line of acting for heaven multiple times, and Duan Yun knew well she was the most hardworking amongst the Jade Pearl heroes. Because for so long, she was managing the city lord's tasks, burdened with numerous trivial matters. At this moment, Duan Yun began digging in the direction pointed by Lang Yiming. With a thrust of his Huangshan golden sword, a sword pillar of qi plowed downwards. As the sword pillar passed, the soil parted like waves, forming a pathway. A man and 3 women navigated through, and their speed was not slow. Especially Lang Yiming and Lang Yishue, they even felt a bit fast. Because as Duan Yun tunneled, he intentionally smoothed the bottom edge of the hole, making it as if they were sliding down a slide. Along the way, Lang Yiming and Lang Yishue sniffed the soil periodically, adjusting direction. By this time, even Duan Yun realized the direction was likely correct, because even he could smell the earthy scent in the soil becoming stronger. With a crash, the soil gave way, and water surged towards them. They had tunneled into the lake. The 4 swam out of the tunnel and floated in the lake water. Duan Yun felt a bit worried, because he knew very well water easily carried away scents, which made tracking difficult. But the goddess-catcher sisters didn't disappoint him. After a short pause, they swam in a specific direction. This lake was vast and deep, easily described as an inland sea. The water was icy and piercing, the expanse dark and foreboding, as if leading to the netherworld. They swam at a good pace and covered considerable distance. With a splash, as Duan Yun emerged with Lang Yiming and Lang Ishue from the water, he felt, "Where have we come to? Is this still heroic land?" Because even though Yuzhu Manor was near the lake, and the Jade Pearl heroes often liked fishing by the lake, Duan Yun, who ventured deep into the Source Palace of the lake to slay a Source Palace noble, seldom came here. However, traversing a bamboo grove on the shore, the view ahead suddenly opened. In front, several manors appeared. Some of these manors even seemed familiar. Feng Linger was the first to react, saying, "Aren't these the estates on Spring Mountain?" Spring Mountain is a mountain outside Wangchun City, with a few estates owned by large households who couldn't afford expansive manors in the city, so they built on the mountain instead. The owners of these estates once lived a life of doing business in the city by day and returning to the mountain to reside afterward. But considering the inconvenience, these estates became only periodically inhabited, maintaining grandeur yet lacking upkeep. Lung Ishue quickly hastened her steps, arriving at Wang Family Manor. Pointing inside, her expression was very serious. Duan Yun silently marveled. "Found it so quickly?"